All right. What's up, Dragon Brood? We're going to do something different today, and we're going to go live on two channels. So we are multi-streaming on 2Kick and YouTube. And we're going to try to cover all of the cards, at least the rares and mythics, in Wilds of Eldraine, because I've not looked at hardly any of these cards. So it's going to be the first time for me, right along with you. So let's hop in and see. Oop, boop, 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 boop. Hold on a second. I'm having an issue here. Give me one quick second. We'll get underway. Looks like one of my connections is having a issue. So let me see what I got here. Let me see if I can figure this out real quick. We'll try to get this fired up. Well, actually, I guess we're just going to be on YouTube for now because something isn't working with my other Kick stream key right now. And we're just not going to worry about that. We're just going to move it, and we're going to get into some Wilds of Eldraine stuff. So let's get into it. Let me switch screens here. And like I said, we're going to go over most of just the rares and mythics because there's just a lot of cards, and we don't want this to run forever. But this is the first time I've looked at a lot of these. So these are going to be initial impressions. Some of them may be wrong. Some of them might be crazy pie in the sky. Some of them I might say something, and then we review a card 20 minutes from now that I go, oh, well, never mind. Now that this card exists, it's not going to matter anyway. So just bear with me while we get through it. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. If there's any non-rares or mythics you want to talk about, feel free to post those in the chat as well, and we can bring those up and talk about them when we come across them. So we're going to start in order of the set. The set's ordered in Wooburg order, so we're going to go white, blue, black, red, green, and then we'll cover the multicolor cards, the artifacts, all that good stuff. So we may break these up into smaller chunks, so if you see this on YouTube, you may just see the white cards, then the blue cards, and the black cards, because otherwise this is probably going to end up being like a multi-hour stream. I have no idea how long this is going to take. Okay, so Delaney Manor says a 4/4 flyer plus some stuff. Sure, yeah, exactly. Let's see what we got here. So we have Archon of the Wild Rose. It's a 2 colorless white for a 4/4 flying Archon. Other creatures you control that are enchanted by auras you control have base power and toughness 4/4 and flying. It's interesting that it says particularly by other auras you control. So it can't be like if your opponent put something on one of your cards, it doesn't automatically get it 4/4 and flying. But this card's actually pretty sweet when you consider that all of the new rolls count as aura tokens. So you could end up just playing a bunch of auras or things that put little rolls on things, and then on turn 4, 5, 6, something like that, play this, and then just attack with a pile of 4/4 flyers, if I'm reading this correctly. So this could be pretty good, honestly. This could be like the top end for some roll-based deck or something, which could be pretty sweet. So I'm kind of into this one. I don't think this one's too bad. I think it would be gangbusters, no, but I think it could be a good role player. Role player. See what I did there? In the new standard. What do we got here? This is another rare. This is a Tale for the Ages. Colorless and a white enchantment. Enchanted creatures you control get +2. Well, these probably go in the same deck then, right? We were just talking about putting the rolls that happen to be auras. So you're going to get the tournament of 4/4s, and they're going to get +2/+2. So now they just there's 6/6s with flying and whatever abilities they already have. So like, yeah, this sounds good. I'm into this. This is literally like the beginning to a deck, right? You play like 4 Tale of the Ages, probably 3 or 4 of the 4/4 flyer, and then a bunch of stuff that puts rolls on things that happen to be mono white, right? That's the bulk of a deck already. Now, is it any good? I don't know. We'll find out on the first week or whatever after set goes live. But I think it is interesting that those could work together. Let's move on. Let's see what other rares and mythics we've got here in white. We have Exfil The Interlopers. 3 colorless white. It's a sorcery. Choose any number between 0 and 10. Destroy all creatures with power greater than or blah, blah, blah. It's a sweeper. Let's move on. We already have like 80 of those in standard. That's not exciting to talk about. All right. Heartflame Duelist. Colorless and a white. 3/1. Human Knight. And it has an adventure that's Heartflame / 2 colorless and a red. This deals 3 damage to any target. Or its regular ability is instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and it's a 3/1. Wow, this card's actually kind of sweet. I'm kind of into this. Like this card's pretty cool. Like a 3/1 for 2 is like not super, but then all your instants and sorceries, assuming you're playing burn spells, have lifelink, so that's pretty cool. And then just as a spell, it's a removal spell. It's not even just a removal spell, it's 3 damage to any source at instant speed. Now it's 3 mana for 3 damage, which we have in a lot of different ways, but it's an acceptable spell on a quality creature. And then if for some reason you've played a couple of these out already, and then you deal burn damage later, those have lifelink. So yeah, I'm kind of digging this card. Now I will say the downside is you would think the lifelink would be good against mono red, but mono red could also shift to playing more of whatever in the festivities or whatever it is. I think it is. It deals 1 damage to all your opponent's creatures and your opponents. So maybe, but it is at least a playable card, and it happens to be both a human and a knight, which are relevant for cards that already exist as humans and cards that are probably, well, if it's like last time, knights that exist in Eldraine. So this card actually could see a lot of play. I could be into this. Some comments we have are, hi, Mr. Dragon, love your content. Can't wait to see your decks for WOE. Hopefully an adventure deck. Thank you. Probably at some point. I can't promise you when, though. Hi, everyone. Hope all is well. I don't know about anyone else, but I really like this set. I think a lot of people are going to like this set, honestly. I think it's going to be very, very good. Moving on to more rares and mythics here. Let's see what we got. We have Lady of Laughter. That's a cool name. All right, it's 3 colorless, white, for 4/5, very noble, flying, and celebration at the beginning of your end step. If 2 or more non-land permanents entered the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. Huh. All right. So if I'm playing some type of token deck or something, this is cool. Actually, you know what? I guess if something comes into play and it adds a roll or makes a roll, that counts as adding. I mean, I guess that counts because it's a counter that happens to also be an aura. Oh, that's weird. I need to check the ruling on that. If that's the case, then this is actually really good. Otherwise, it becomes more limited to things like token decks or little weenie decks or something like that. But it is a 4/5 flyer, which is pretty good. This is going to sound weird to say on this card that it only draws a card because, you know, only sometimes does it draw a card. So you are paying 5 for a 4/5 flyer most of the time. That wouldn't be unreal to say this maybe gets a card every other turn. And that's probably still fine if it lives. But how many turns do I need a 4/5 flyer to live to close out the game? You know what I mean? So far of the rares we've seen in white, this is probably the least exciting of them, mostly because, again, outside of like a token-based deck or something, I'm not sure if it has the most obvious application, unless, like I said, the aura or the rolls count as making a permanent onto another card, other than just being a counter that counts as an aura, which is weird how they work. I need to read up on them. But, because again, I've not looked at this set hardly at all before. I've seen like 10 cards, I think. But yeah, this is actually not a bad card. I just don't know if it's a great card. If you play limited, this is probably going to be an awesome bomb to draw, and it's going to be great. But for constructed play, for standard, there might just be better things we could be doing for 5 mana. Like, the question is still going to be, because we don't have the rotation, like, would you rather play this or rather play like AO the Dawn Sky, right? Like, I'm probably playing the Dragon before I'm playing this. And that's kind of the issue, right? As standard gets bigger, because we're not going to rotate for 3 years, there's going to be some cards that are still now going to have to wait another year before they get to be the center of attention, because there's just other stuff that's better. So that's a little tough there. All right. Moving on. Oh, I have seen this one. So Moonshaker Cavalry, 5 colorless, white, for a 6/6 flying Spirit Knight. When Moonshaker Cavalry enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. There's a couple of things here. First things first, I want to see, people have been saying, like, this is the white Crater Hoof. Like, it kinda, not really, because green has the ability to just find creatures and put them into play. Green has the ability to ramp up to stuff. The Crater Hoof itself, I believe, also has haste. So it's like, this doesn't quite do Craterhoof things. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. Still really good. But also in green, you're likely to have more like Saproling tokens and miscellaneous other stuff, or a bunch of elves. Not necessarily the case in white. And if you are, does white want to have this as their top end card? It's not like it's terrible. It's totally fine. And again, if you play this in limited, it's probably going to be a backbreaker when you draw it, because unless your opponent, well, even then, it's just when it enters the battlefield. So if your opponent kills it, everything else is still getting a bonus and flying. So yeah, cool card. I will probably still try to play it at some point. I will try to trick it into play somehow or whatever. But overall, I don't think this is going to be like a gangbusters-y card. However, right now they are pre-ordering for like $20+. So I'm assuming people are trying to jam these in a bunch of commander decks anyway. And to be fair, it doesn't have to be Craterhoof to still be good, right? Like if you get this on turn 10 or 12 in a commander game, it might still just end the game, right? You're giving, I'm assuming, 6+ creatures minimum, +X and flying. So like, sure, like it's probably still going to be good enough. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be spectacular. You're just playing a one of anyway. And if you find a way to get it or tutor it up or whatever, that's just going to be a game winner. So it does add a game winner to white. Probably good for commander. Probably not great for 60 card Magic. All right. Pollen Shield Hair. Colorless and a white for a 2/2 rabbit that says creatures you control, creature tokens you control, which is important, get +1/+1. And for 1 green, it has Hair Raising, a fun name on a rabbit card. Target creature you control gains vigilance and gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. However, that is a sorcery speed adventure. Yeah, this card seems pretty good. The downside to this card, though, is that it itself is a 2/2 and does not benefit even from multiples being on the battlefield. So even if you have 2 of these, they're not pumping other token creatures and rabbits, right? It's just other token creatures. So if your opponent does anything that deals like 2 damage or 3 damage or whatever to all your creatures, like you're still going to lose all your tokens and your rabbits. So there's that downside. And its ability also has to be played as a sorcery as the adventure. It'd be really cool if that adventure was an instant. I don't think it'd be busted, but it'd be a lot more versatile. I think as a sorcery, it does kind of limit it a little bit, but I don't mind it in the sense that because it is so cheap, you could actually Hair Raising, give something like, I don't know, let's say +3/+3 or +4/+4, and then play the rabbit on the same turn to increase the threat of that attack, which is still pretty powerful, right? And because the thing gets vigilance, you get to attack and block with it, which I'm assuming is going to be no less than a 2/2 at that point, maybe even larger. So it's a good card. I would still play it. If I've played several token decks, I will play more token decks. This will definitely make the cut in those lists. What do we got? We got some comments here. Delaney Manor says, any mechanic which rewards going wide mitigates sweeping is good in my book. Yeah, I feel you. There's a lot of sweepers right now. I do not blame you for being bothered by that. We did the rabbit. Here is Regal Bunnycorn. Okay. This is a unicorn rabbit, I guess. Oh, it is literally creature type rabbit unicorn. All right. So colorless and a white for an XX creature. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. Again, this is if... All right, give me a quick second. I need to look up our roles in MTG permanents, because that's going to affect how I feel about a lot of cards here. MTG roles. All right, here we are. I know this is like, it's not set to see this on screen. This is wonderful viewing. I'm sorry for that. Let's see. Roles are structurally important to the set. Such a mechanic of balance, blah, blah, blah. While you nope, that doesn't answer that question. Roles are colorless aura enchantment tokens with enchant. So they're tokens. They're not permanents. All right. So that answers that question. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. So then this is another card that could particularly go into tokens list. So if you have 8 tokens, this thing's an 8/8. The thing I'll say about that, though, is we've had, what's her name? Queen Alanol, which whenever you have a creature come into play, make an extra token, and then she's larger, equal to the number of tokens. And that card's had a hard time squeezing into the list we play already. And that's making an additional one each time. Granted, for 1 more mana, it's like a green and 2 white, I think, which isn't bad. And this is cheaper, so that does give it a little bit more of an edge. And it does count non-land permanents, so it doesn't have to be just tokens. So if you had a planeswalker or an enchantment or an artifact or whatever, it counts that too. This feels just okay. I feel like, I mean, this is tough because if I was playing a tokens list, I could see where this, the other rabbit, who knows what else, right? Like, but we already have token variants of different decks. So maybe these all just live in the same list, and those are just generally better because of all the cards that are coming out in this set. I wouldn't give this high marks because it's very specialized in what it's trying to do. But when it works, this is probably going to be like a 8/8 plus or something, which is kind of cool. Going down the list, we have Spellbook Vendor. Colorless and a white for a 2/2 human peasant with vigilance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1 colorless. When you do, create a sorcerer token or sorcerer role token attached to target creature you control. And the sorcerer role is if you control another role on it, you have to remove it. And when enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and has whenever this creature attacks, scry 1. So basically give a creature +1/+1 and gets a scry when it attacks. This seems solid, honestly. I don't think this is bad. Again, it's a human. I don't know if that's going to matter or not. Like the issue we're going to have is just there's going to be so many good humans. You're going to be forced to decide like what's making the cut or not. Right? Like, is this... Because like obviously stuff like the veterans and whatever, just putting +1/+1s or pumping our humans, like those win. But getting to put in free, not a free, but a cheap +1/+1 on another creature and get to scry is kind of nice. And this card itself has vigilance. So I don't hate that. I just don't know how good it is. Like, this is where, until we see roles in action and how impactful they are, it's going to be hard to know. Now, I will say this. If, as we go through the set review and we see some cards that actually happen to care about roles, then this card becomes way more important, right? Because in every turn, you're just adding a role to something and getting whatever that other bonus is. So if there's a role-based deck or sub-theme to a deck, then this card could be very good. I think just as a human in Magic or in Standard, it's probably not going to be able to beat out the other cards you want to play. It's an interesting card, though. It has a lot going on for 2 mana, on top of having Vigilance. Where do we go now from here? Other rares and mythics in white. Oh, this is a... I read the name of it. I didn't read what this did, though, when I first saw it. So 3 blind mice, 2 colorless and a white. Saga, so obviously you add a counter each turn, do each thing. This does have 4 chapters, though. Create a 1/1 white mouse creature token. Then on chapters 2 and 3, you create a token that's a copy of target token you control, so could just be more mice. And then on chapter 4, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, you're paying 3 for a 1/1 just right out the gate. And then for the next 2 turns, hopefully you have paid 3 for a 3/3 minimum, right? To get another mouse and another mouse. But and then you get +1/+1 on all your stuff. And they do gain vigilance, which isn't terrible. I mean, I guess if I'm playing other tokens, then I like this a little bit more. Like if for some reason I have a 2/2 or 3/3 or whatever, some beast tokens or whatever, then this has more value because it's like, okay, I played it, I made a 1/1, and now I get to copy that 3/3 or maybe a 4/4 Rhino or something like that. Then I'm getting a lot of value out of this card. And then on top of that, I get a big attack, you know, in 3 turns or whatever. So yeah, this maybe has a place. Maybe has a place. I think if I'm just playing just a straight up tokens list, that's generally at least how token decks look now, not including anything else I don't know about Wilds of Eldraine yet, but how they look now with mostly 1/1s and in some cases 2/2s, this is a lot less exciting. But if we are able to get 2/2s, 3/3s, or whatever regularly, then this has a lot more value, and I'm kind of more into it. Yeah, and that is true. Delaney says here, like, if your first mouse dies, you don't get a 2 and a 3, though. Yeah, and that's where you have to have other tokens in play. That's what I'm saying. If you already have other things, then maybe. But if you just draw this as it is to get the 1/1, and you have to block with it or something happens, right? Then you just have nothing to get from this, and that's pretty disappointing. So yeah, I'm not high on this. I'm actually, even if this ends up being playable, I'm a little surprised it's a rare. And usually when I feel that way, that feels like there's something here that I don't know. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a reason they made this rare, that they don't want it to show up too often in drafts. They don't want this to be too easy for people to get for some. They want people to be excited about opening this for some reason. I don't know. There's something here I'm not getting, and I'm not sold on it. Moving into Virtue of Loyalty. 3 colorless, white. Is that like the Rings of Brighthearth in the background? That's sort of what that looks like. It's an enchantment with a adventure, which is kind of cool. But the enchantment itself says, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Untap those creatures. An instant for the adventure, Ardenvale Fealty, a colorless and a white, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. This card is great. This card, like, okay, so the adventure itself is more than acceptable, right? Hell, we play Resolute Reinforcements right now that makes 2 1/1s, right? This just makes a 2/2 straight up at instant speed for the same cost. And it's a token, and we already saw a bunch of stuff that care about tokens and other stuff, right? So that's cool. But then later in the game, you just get to put a +1/+1 on everything. So you can attack, play this, put a +1/+1 across the board, untap your board, right? Like, this is good. Hell, I have a +1/+1 counters commander deck that I would love to play this type of card. Like, this feels really good. Right? Like, I am not shocked that this card is pre-ordering for 15 plus. This card feels very good. Now, for 60 card Magic, well, I was about, okay, let me correct. I was about to say in 60 card Magic, you don't play a set of 4, but the fact that it's just a 2/2 for 2 at flash speed, basically, still isn't terrible. I mean, it happens to be a knight and not a human, so that could matter, I guess. But I could see a lot of decks this card could go in. And the fact that your worst part of this is you basically get a grizzly bear, a 2/2 for 2 at instant speed. And your upside is late game, I just get to pump my whole team and keep on tapping. This card feels pretty cool. like I'm kind of into this card. Like, almost too, that it has like a sense of inevitability too. Like, if your opponent can't survive that first big combat, it's just going to get worse every turn, right? Unless they sweep the board or something. So I'm digging this card. I also like the fact of, it's not a bad, like, let's say your opponent sweeps the board. It's not even a bad top deck if you draw it with no creatures out, because you're like, fine, I'll just make a 2/2 and just try to attack with this for a bit, right? It still does something at every stage of the game. I'm into this. Some of the comments here says it's cool combined, for example, with Wedding Announcement. Oh, you're talking about the other card? Yeah. That's true. Let's see. Patty Laddie says, I feel this set would be better with rotation. Then again, I do not like the no rotation thing. That's a thing I think people are going to be split on for a while. But to give context to that, I know this is getting off the review situation here, but to give a little bit of context, even when I ran my store, when I worked at Wizards, when I worked with Card Kingdom, like, there was always the conversation of people wanted standard to be longer, because one of the things was people did not want to get cards and then not be able to use them in 6 months or 9 months or whatever, right? Let's say they picked up something in June. They didn't want to pick those up because they knew come September, they weren't going to be able to use them anymore, right? Or October, depending on the year. But now it's like you can buy a thing and know you have a minimum of a year to still use it, right? Usually 1.5 to 2 years plus now. And they're hoping as they start doing more stuff for standard, more people are going to feel comfortable buying standard decks and want to play more standard because their decks will be better longer. And this is important, especially, let's say, when we go to Ixalan and you like playing Merfolk, right? Because we haven't had Merfolk in a minute. There's probably going to be a bunch of Merfolk in Ixalan if we do it similar to the last couple of Ixalan sets, right? if this was regular standard, you would basically have your 2 years with it and then done. Like now you get an extra year to play Merfolk, which is pretty sweet, right? If you're a fan of that, or dinosaurs or whatever it is. So I get it. And I think it's at least worth trying, right? We did the opposite where we had the fast rotation and we didn't even make it to one rotation cycle. People race because everybody's like, oh, standard is too long and we should have more rotation. They're like, okay, cool. We'll just rotate every year and a half instead of every 2 years. People lost their crap. We didn't even make it to the rotation and then they changed back to the thing because there was so much hate for it. So I get them wanting to try to go longer and see how people feel about it. So I don't blame them. I say let's ride it out, see how it works out first. I will say as a creator, an interesting thing is I already have a pile of decks, so I can start from there and see what fits from Eldraine and then just start doing that and update stuff before I even get into all new Eldraine-based content now, because I don't have to immediately delete like 60 decks that aren't going to be legal anymore because they have cards that are rotating. Let's see. Boop. Is standard in standard or commander? Seems weak in standard. I disagree. I think this card is very playable in standard. Even more so if there's a knight-based deck and you get to make a flash speed 2/2 knight token. The set would be so much better with Oko. I was so upset he has to wait for so long for a return. I think the world just needs a break from Oko. You can just go look at his shirtless pics online and have fun with that. All right, so I was gonna say werewolf. It's Werefox Bodyguard. White, colorless for a 2/2 elf fox knight. So lots of words there. Oh, it's an elf randomly. That's cool. Flash. When this enters the battlefield, exile up to one other target non-fox creature until Werefox Bodyguard leaves the battlefield. You can pay a white and a colorless. You can sacrifice this to gain 2 life. We like playing what's his name, right? The werewolf. So if we like playing that, you know what I mean? Like we get to flash this into play. So we get an instant speed combat trick. It can be 2 life in a pinch if we need it to be. Brutal Cathar gets run at now, to be fair about Brutal Cathar, there are some situations where you can end up with 2 or 3 things up under it. And that is a benefit. And getting the 3/3 first striker sometimes is good. But I do like the flash op. I like what this card brings. I really do. And this is a case where had we had normal rotation, then some decks would probably swap out Cathar for this, even though it happens to not be a human in some of the decks that it's in. And that would have been fine. I think now we're in a different world where you could play both. So some mono white aggro decks could play like maybe not 8 of these, but like 6 of them, right? And play that. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know. This is neat. Playable, absolutely. Maybe even more so if there's an elf or a fox or a knight deck. It goes into those, obviously, on theme. But yeah, cool card. Kind of weird that it's... why is it an elf? There's probably a backstory to this whole thing where, like, I don't know, his dad's an elf, his mom's a wolf or something, like, I don't know. But, like, it's weird because this definitely just looks like a wolf. Also, why is it not a werewolf if it's a werefox? I have a lot of questions about this card that have nothing to do with its mechanics, but just like, it's called werefox. It's not a werewolf. There's no elf anything in the picture other than maybe being in the woods, but it happens to be an elf. I do not understand. Oh, well. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, this is not the review y'all expected it would be. Oh, that's all the white cards. All right, cool. So we'll get into doing the black cards here in a second. Or blue cards, I guess, is what we'll do. All right, cool. All right, y'all. So continuing on, we're going to be doing the blue cards for Wilds of Eldraine if you're just joining us. I will say I have not looked at any of these cards. So if I say something and then you see a later review and I change my opinion on something, it's because I learned something about the set as I went along. So don't persecute me in the comments or anything like that. But yeah, we had some fun with the white cards. Let's get into the blue cards. Also, let's see, keeping up with comments here. We got Fox Flash to protect Flesh Gorger from board wipe and bring it back as a 7/5. Yeah, it totally can go into the blink decks. Like, I think that's a real viability for the Fox. Let's see. Moving on, we have Asinine Antics. It's a 4 mana, so 2 blue sorcery. You may cast this card as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it, so you can make it cost 6. For each creature your opponent controls, create a cursed roll token attached to that creature. So you put a counter on it, and the creature becomes a 1/1. Oh boy. This is kind of interesting, right? I don't know if this feels like it's better when rolls are bad in the meta, right? Because then you just turn everything into 1/1s your opponent has. It is at sorcery speed though, so let that be known. It is definitely not instant. But if rolls are already a thing, like you're putting it on your opponent's creatures, and they're like, okay, well, I'll just play my thing and put a roll token on it, and now it's back to being a whatever 3/3, 4/4, whatever. Or like that human we saw in white that like during your upkeep you can pay 1 white and put a whatever roll on something. Well, then you remove the curse roll and now it has the other thing. So this card's interesting. I just don't know if it's that great. What I do like about this card though is in Commander, right? Because it's for each creature your opponents control. So you're not even choosing target opponent. So literally everything on the battlefield that's not yours becomes a 1/1. And then your opponents have to work to get all of those off. So I like that part of it a lot better than I do in 60 card Magic. So I'm kind of into it. Yeah, there are some different rolls. This one puts a cursed roll, and the creature just becomes a 1/1. All right, let's see what else we got in blue. I feel like there's going to be some crazy stuff in this set for blue. Elusive Otter. So fans of otters, this is what, our third otter card or something in Magic? Feels like there's not very many. But this is a 1/1 for 1. It has prowess. Creatures with power less than Elusive Otter's power can't block it. And then it has Grove's Boundary or Grove's Bounty as a sorcery for a green and X. Distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, and you can kind of put it wherever you want. So you could pay 4 and move 3 counters to one thing, 2 on 1 on 3 different things. Like this is, this card might be like sneaky playable. Like it doesn't matter that it's an otter. It could be almost any creature type. But it starts out fairly unblockable, right? Creature with power less than this card's power. So yeah, everything can block it until you pump it up. I don't know where this belongs. Though the interesting thing is, if you've been wanting to add blue to any of your +1/+1 counter decks in Standard, this is something you could consider, depending on how many other blue cards fit that strategy. But I don't hate it. I don't think it's great. Like, I'm not sitting here thinking this is going to be like a top-end Standard rare, but it is fun and interesting, and it's something I would definitely put some thought into playing. Let's see. Let's bring this one up. Simon says, player in Esper with the previous card that synergies with Aura, the Orzhov 3-mana enchantment. Oh, yeah, true. There's definitely interactive things you can do there. Extraordinary Journey. We have XX blue enchantment. So a lot going on here. It's going to be a very expensive. So I'm assuming it does something crazy. When this card enters the battlefield, exile up to X target creatures. For each of those cards, its owner may play it for as long as it remains exiled. Whenever one or more non-token creatures enters the battlefield, if one or more of them entered from exile or was cast from exile, you draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay, so the short version is pay blue XX. Whatever X is, you get to exile that many things your opponents control creatures, and then they are exiled. And then your opponent can play them whenever, like they normally could. But when they play them, you get to draw a card, but that's only once a turn that you get to draw. Man, this card's annoying. I think this is a card. This isn't one you obviously want to go heavy on in your deck, right? But I could see times where you would play 1 or 2 of these. Because even just slowing your opponent down for like 2 turns, right? Just, all right, I'm going to get rid of your 2 best creatures. and then force you to have to recast them or whatever, while I'm trying to like come back and leave you with some 1/1s while I'm at like 6 or something, right? Like that is a viable thing, and it's not unreal to be able to play this for either 4 or 6 mana. Do I think it's great? No, but actually does have real uses. If I have something where I just have extra mana, where that's from some type of artifacts or whatever, then this becomes really good. But I'm not going crazy on this one. Not going crazy on it. But let's move on. Let's see what we got here. We have Fairy Slumber Party. 4 colorless blue sorcery. Return all creatures to their owner's hands. For each opponent who controlled a creature returned this way, you create 2 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. And this creature can block only creatures with flying. All right, so for each opponent, usually in 60 card, that's going to be one opponent. So for each opponent that bounced a creature, you get 2 fairies, but the fairies can only block flyers. You know, I don't love the cost on a sorcery for this for 6, but it's pretty strong, right? It sets your opponent back, it bounces everything, and Commander, it's super annoying, right? Because you're going to bounce everything from everybody, and then you're going to get whatever, like 6 1/1 fairies, which is a real number. They can only block flyers, but they still do something. So yeah, I think this is playable. I don't think this will be more than like $1 or $2 tops, because in 60 card, you're not going to play more than one of these most likely, if you play it at all. And Commander, you only need one, but I could see where a lot of Commander decks also just don't have room for a card like this. It's not terrible in that setting, but yeah, it's a neat card. Thematically, it's cool, and the art's kind of funny with the fairies just knocking people out everywhere. But yeah, not super big on this one. Farsight Ritual. 2 colorless, blue instant. It has bargain, where you can sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token when you cast it. You look at the top 4 cards of your library. If this spell was bargained, look at the top 8 cards. Instead, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is just like copies number 5 and 6 in your deck of what is it? We already have the card, the one that has like flashback or whatever that does this. I don't know why I'm forgetting the name right now, but yeah, it's same cost. And you look at your top 4, and then when you play the extra cost, you look at 7, right? So this you could look at 4 or you could look at 8, but they're both instants. They both cost 4. I don't know if I'm playing this. Now, again, a year from now, when the other one rotates out, Memory Deluge. Yeah, that's the name of it. But right now, I don't know if I'm playing it. I mean, I guess if I really want to have number 5 and number 6 of Memory Deluge in my deck, I mean, I guess. But I can't imagine that's the case. So yeah, this is probably just pushed to the wayside. I don't really see the benefit. Like, it does have a benefit if you have tokens you can sacrifice or whatever when you cast it, to just see 8 straight up without having to wait. But the fact that you can just use Memory Deluge twice is still better, I think. So I don't think we're playing this card. I could be wrong. I'm not a blue player connoisseur, obviously. I'll let somebody else tell me I'm wrong there. What do we got here? We have Horned Lockwell, which is like a narwhal whale. 4 blue for a 6/6 with flash, ward 2. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn, which I guess isn't a big deal if you're playing it with flash anyway during somebody's end step. The adventure, though, is Lagoon Breach, a colorless and a blue instant. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on top or bottom of their library. Yeah, this is a fine card. I mean, the actual like Lagoon Breach is reasonable. You know, just put a card on top or bottom, slow your opponent down. You know, later in the game, you get a big 6/6 that's hard to deal with because it has ward 2. Yeah, this is just a decent card. It could be something you play 3 copies of, 2 copies of in a blue deck. Could even go into some aggro decks and just use the adventurous tempo, use the big side as like an actual beater later in the game. Yeah, this is fine. Like, not great, not terrible. It's just a reasonable Magic card. Oh, this one I did see. This one I did see. I know what this one is. Ingenious Prodigy. It's X and a blue for an 0/1 human wizard with Skulk. In Skulk, which we hadn't seen on a Magic card in a while, this creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. And then it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it has any counters, you can remove one and draw a card. There's a lot of things here, right? Because you can play this even early as like a 3/4 for 4 and makes a reasonable blocker. Then in your upkeep, you can also remove a counter to draw a card. The other thing that's interesting too is that you may remove a counter. So it's not even mandatory. So if your opponent just has stuff and you need to have that 3 power blocker or whatever to keep them at bay, you can just do that, right? If you have another way to add counters to this, you can just keep getting cards every turn, right? Put a counter, remove a counter. Like, that's a thing. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see this card show up in a few spots. Something somebody else pointed out, I was just about to say that too, is like, was ninjas, right? Because it's an 0/1 that your opponent can't block. And then you're just like, okay, cool, here comes a ninja that I'm going to flash in. There's just like nothing you can do about it. So this card has a lot of uses. Like, it's a type of card that you look at and normally say, like, this card's dumb. Nobody's going to play this. Like, well, who wants an X power creature or whatever? But it actually really does do stuff, honestly. It's not all obvious stuff, but when it does stuff, it's going to be super annoying. Let's see what else we got. Is that all of them? No, there's got to be more blue rares and mythics, right? Oh, here we go. Talion's Messenger. 2 colorless and a blue for a 1/3 fairy noble flying. Whenever you attack with 1 or more fairies, you draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target fairy you control. All right, this makes sense. You know, this is basically a fairy lord. If you're playing a fairy deck, whenever you attack, you get to draw and discard, and then you get to put a +1/+1 on a fairy. And that's pretty cool. It's not for each, though. It's just whenever you attack with 1 or more fairies. So when you attack, even if you attack with like 3 things, you trigger this once. So that's a little light because it's going to take you a long time to put +1/+1s on things. But it's kind of cool. Let you filter stuff, put things in your graveyard. It is a 1/3, so it can block a few things. It does have flying. Yeah, it's fine. It's a different variation on a fairy lord. Probably older formats or commanders that like playing fairies want this type of card as an additional thing. So it's okay. It's fine. It's kind of all I really just, yeah. Like, not excited about it, but it's fine. I'll probably try to do the fairy deck at some point. Is this? I was about to say twinning. It's Twining Twins. 2 colorless, blue, 4/4 flying vigilance, ward 1 fairy wizard. That's a lot for 4 mana. 4 mana, 4/4 flying vigilance, ward 1. And then the adventure is Swift Spiral, colorless and a white. Instant, exile target non-token creature. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, being the next end step. All right, so it's a blink. So on one side, it's a blink spell. On the other side, it's just a big 4/4 with vigilance that's hard to deal with. This card's kind of baller, to be honest, right? If you're playing a fairy deck or whatever anyway already, a 4/4 flyer with ward 1 and vigilance is kind of rough for some aggro decks to deal with, right? Because you're just going to shut them down from attacking with some of their creatures because they're not going to want to lose them to your 4/4. And this card's never at risk to dying to like Wandering Emperor because it doesn't tap. So yeah, this is pretty cool. And I think we've seen another card or two already now that if you are playing some type of blink-based deck where you want to remove something from play and return it back for value, you have blue and white cards that do that now in this set, and we had some white ones already existed. So this is kind of could just go into that style of deck, and you have a quality creature on one of your blink effects. Because that's kind of been one of the shortcomings of those decks is that you kind of have to give up some threat or versatility to have that blink card, right? Now, you don't necessarily have to do that. You could swap a couple of those out for these. And now when you have a thing you need to blink, you've got it. If not, you just have a big creature that's hard for your opponent to deal with. So yeah, I'm kind of into this card. I'm kind of into it. Matsuo asks, will you be making Dimir Fairy control deck? I will say this. I cannot promise you any deck I'm going to make because I make a pile of decks each season. Probably if it's a control deck, Dimir Fairy is probably not a control deck. That's probably at best a mid-range deck. But if it's a control deck, the odds of it showing on my channel become much and much lower. I probably only do like a couple of control decks a month. So will it happen? Possibly. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Virtue of unknown. Oh no, virtue of knowledge. I don't know why I said. Why did I say unknown? That isn't. Why did my brain do that? Virtue of knowledge. 4 colorless and a blue. Enchantments. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And the adventure on here is a colorless and a blue Vantress Visions. As an instant, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Like, this is a card that, like, the permanent does a thing and the instant does a similar thing. So you just get the ability or the option all the time with this card. Yeah. I have a feeling this card's kind of busted. Right? Like, not that it's going to break standard or anything like that, but like the times it sticks, it's probably going to be ridiculous. Like, this is an interesting card though, right? Because we've had like Panharmonicon and stuff like that. So like, yeah, this has got to be a thing. This has to be playable, even if not in standard. This has to be his thing decks want in Commander. So yeah, this is getting a thumbs up. I don't even know what the hell I'm going to do with it yet, but I can't consider that a bad card. But all right, that concludes the blue cards. So we're going to wrap this up and then get into the black cards. Let me set this up and we'll get into more cards here. And all right, just to set everything straight, I have not seen any cards in the set except for what we've already reviewed for the most part. That's not true. I've seen like 8 or 10 cards, and we've already seen a couple of those. So most of these I don't know. I'm going over them for the first time. If you're just joining the stream, I'm just giving like my first blush, what I think we can do with them. Are they good or bad in standard? Whatever. Feel free to leave comments if you have crazy ideas of that you can do with the decks or with the cards. But yeah. Question here is, when is pre-release? I believe if I check a calendar here, you're going to see the online, whatever they're calling now, the streamer thing on August 31st, and the pre-releases will be that weekend. So that Friday, Saturday, so September 1, 2, and 3. And then the set will go live on Arena on that Tuesday and then be for sale that following Friday. So yeah, there you go. And then to start with here in black, we have Ashiok Wicked Manipulator. There is a lot of stuff going on here. I had seen this card, though, because they promoted it early. But 3 colorless, black, 5 loyalty. If you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from your top of your library instead. So if you have stuff that has a cost of like pay 3 life, instead you exile 3 cards from the top of your library. You can +1 loyalty to look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, and put the other into your hand. You can -2, create 2 1/1 Black Nightmare creature tokens with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Or you can just -7, target player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the total mana value of cards you own and exile. This card feels good. I just don't know what the heck I'm going to do with it, to be honest. It's like getting to pay alternate costs to get stuff cheap or free is cool as far as like abilities or something. Getting 2 1/1s is nice, and because you have multiple ways to possibly exile things, that could be good. But yeah, I don't know. It's a 5 mana planeswalker that doesn't feel impactful immediately comparatively to what we have right now, but that it could also be purposeful that they're trying to tone down the planeswalkers a little bit. But at some point, I'm sure I'm just going to die to this because somebody's going to make a deck that has like, you know, all the big cards, the 5, 6, 7 mana things, and I'm going to get milled for like 25 or something. But that's okay. If you get me that way, you get me. It's an interesting card. It's neat. I just don't know at all what I would do to build around this just yet. Beseech the Mirror. Colorless, black, black, black. So they definitely want this to be hard to deal with. You can bargain it and then search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was bargained, you may cast the exile spell without paying its mana cost if that spell's mana value is 4 or less. Put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast this way. This card feels pretty good, y'all. I mean, here's the thing. Like, it costs 4 to just go search for a card, basically, right? You go find the thing, put it in your hand. But if you have a way to sacrifice something and the thing you want to cast is 4 or less, you just get to cast the thing. And there's a lot of things we play with right now that are 4 or less. There's planeswalkers, there's sweepers like Depopulate, there's all kinds of things that decks could want to get with this. So this card's actually pretty cool. And I'm wondering if this is impactful in stuff like, I was going to say like Pioneer or Modern, but really Legacy probably plays a card like this, I would think. This is pretty good. I'm into this. I'm feeling it. Tiggertron, I should say here, says tutor and cast Shieldred, I'm assuming. Yeah. That's also a thing you can do, right? You get rid of some 1/1 or 2/2, or hell, even something that comes back like your underdog to go get Shieldred for 4 mana. So that's totally a viable play. Yeah, this is a cool card. I would not be surprised if this ends up being a pretty expensive card in the set, for real. Cruel Somnophage. Colorless and a black for an XX Nightmare. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Can't Wake Up is the sorcery adventure for colorless and a blue. Target player mills 4 cards. This just feels fine. It's got a Nightmare / Lorgoyf type effect. Just mill your opponent, put stuff in the yard. Hopefully for 2 mana, get like an 8/8 or something, right? This is fine. Not a lot to really say about it. If mill decks are decent, this card's probably decent. If they're not, then I will say, though, there have been both blue-white and blue-black mill decks, mostly on the back of Jace these days. And they could possibly use a couple of reasonable threats. And this is a card that could fit into those decks and help it close the clock a little more consistently. So, sure, why not? It doesn't have trample or anything, so you can still just jump block it all day, but it's not a bad card. Devouring Sugar Maw. 2 colorless, black, black. Like this, okay, before I read the rest of this card, can we just appreciate this artwork? Like, seriously. This is the most, it's like a sugar glaze covered donut thing with 3 layers of teeth inside. And it's got, I'm assuming, cherries for eyeballs. And what are the, like, gummy worms for legs? Or something. I don't even know what's going on with this card. Like, that artwork is wild. I don't know what the art director notes were for this thing, but I'm sure they nailed it, whatever it was. Like, this is crazy. But anyway, back to the card. It's a 6/6 horror with menace and trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token. If you don't, tap Devouring Sugar Maw. It has a white and a colorless for have for dinner. Instant, create a 1/1 white human creature token and a food token. This one's really good, too. I mean, all right, so have for dinner, you get to make a human and a food token, just straight up, right? So you're getting 2 tokens for 2 mana, which we know there's a bunch of cards that care about tokens, token creatures, food, whatever, right? This is checking a lot of boxes. And then later on, you just get a 6/6 for 4. And the best part about it is it's not a mandatory sacrifice. So if you can wait till you get other food or whatever, and then you can sacrifice, and now you have your 6/6 again. Or you don't, and you're like, all right, well, I guess you just have to tap it. You know, it is what it is. But it does have menace and trample. So that's pretty legit. Your opponent can't even just like chump block with 2 1/1s and not take damage. Like, this card is stout. And if you have something that's generating tokens or treasure or food or whatever every turn, Yeah, this card's going to be hard to deal with. I like it. I like it. This one's fun. And it has wild artwork. Like, that artwork is something else. What else do we got here in black? Gumdrop Poisoner. This, okay. Now, we just had a sweet piece of artwork. This almost feels too serious for being called the Gumdrop Poisoner. You know what I mean? I'm picturing like the old lady from the witch from Hansel and Gretel, like injecting stuff into the food she's going to try to give the little kids or something, you know? 2 colors and a black for a 3/2 human warlock with lifelink. So that's actually not bad. 3 for a 3/2 with lifelink. And it happens to be a human. When this card enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. And the adventure is Tempt with Tears for 1 black as an instant, create a food token. Yeah, this card's just solid. Again, I like a 2 toughness for 3 mana is not great in current standard, but you're getting a 3/2 for 3. It does have lifelink. In multiples, it's really good because you can give stuff minuses when it comes into play. Also, if you just have other food, which the adventure part of this creates food, but you know, you sacrifice a food at some point during that turn or gain life otherwise from life linkers or whatever, then you play this, you can kill off something, probably a big creature. This is kind of neat. What I like about this card is the card itself isn't like gangbusters good, but in a deck that's able to gain life or cares about creating food tokens or whatever, this becomes an actual real threatening card. And after the fact, it also just gains life, which is pretty cool. I like this quite a bit. This card's pretty neato. What do we got here? Lich Knight's Conquest. 4 colorless and a black sorcery. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens. Return that many creatures, cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ooh, this is neat. Okay. This had my interest. Now it has my attention. You know what I mean? Like, this card's kind of cool. You're talking about 5 mana, so you can't play a lot of these. You're playing 1, usually, if you're going to play it, maybe 2. But being able to sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, or tokens is cool because there are a lot of times you have like extra treasure or extra food or whatever sitting around. And you'd be like, cool, I'm going to get rid of like 3 of these and get my 3 best creatures back. And it's not even from your into your hand. It's from the graveyard to the battlefield. Like, this becomes almost a must counter card. I'm into this. This is cool. Again, I don't think you can play a lot of them, but I think it is reasonable to say, like, all right, I'm going to play 1, maybe 2, and just hope to draw them late game and have like a get out of jail free card. Assuming your opponent's not playing farewell and sacrificing your graveyard, blah, 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 right? A lot of sacrifice effects right now. But again, this could also be a good commander card, right? Game goes a little bit long. You've got some extra tokens sitting around you're not doing anything with, or maybe some 1/1s that can't punch through for an attack. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to get my 5 or 6 best things back out of the graveyard. Like, this is cool. This is cool. I can respect this card. Let's see what else we got here. Now, we got quite a few rares still. Lord Skidders Blessing, a colorless and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, create a Wicked Roll token attached to target creature you control. And this creature gets +1/+1. When it's put into the graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. At the beginning of your draw step, if you control an enchanted creature, you lose 1 life and draw an additional card. So it's just a really slow version of Phyrexian Arena? I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I guess if I have a deck that cares about rolls, then sure, because I'm putting a thing on a creature, it's getting +1/+1. I'm getting some extra value here. All right. But meh? Like, I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not like, it's hard for me to want to be super excited about this. I don't know, like, I'm trying to think like what would have made me excited about this card. Let's see, if you control an enchantment, enchanted creature, it's just, I mean, we have versions of this, right? Where it's lose a life, draw a card. And we have Phyrexian Arena right now that people would play. It's possibly better than Phyrexian Arena in some decks, but even then, you'd have to have a creature already on one, and then this on two, so you could put the roll on something, and then you are better than Phyrexian Arena, right? So even that's not great, and then your opponent kills off your creature, and then you're not getting cards. So yeah, I'm not feeling this one too much. I'm not there on it. Like, I want to be, but I'm trying to talk myself into it, but I don't think I can. I don't think that's where we're at. A roll is a counter or a token that counts as an aura. Like, it's very weird. Lord Skidder, Sewer King, 2 colorless and a black, 3/3. So we got a 3/4/3/3 rat noble. Whenever another rat enters a battlefield under your control, exile up to 1 target card in your opponent's graveyard. At the beginning of a combat on your turn, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. You know what? I'm feeling this card. This card's more than fine. Like, if you are playing something that already cares about tokens or making tokens and happens to be playing black, or if you just wanted to splash black for a couple of copies of this just makes a token every turn. Now, admittedly, your token can't block, but we've already been making whatever the other little artifact tokens that can't block anyway, right? From like Skrelv's Hive. So that's not really that big a deal. But then you get the added bonus that you get to remove stuff from your opponent's graveyard just because a rat came into play. So yeah, it's weird that it's a rat that doesn't pump your other rats, but at the same time, it gives you a rat that has an ETB ability, and it's just making an extra attacker every turn. So yeah, this card's fine. I don't think it's gangbusters, but if I'm playing a rat deck, obviously I want this. If I'm playing some type of token deck, this obviously makes the cut. And it is a 3/3 body, so it can do a fair amount of fighting on its own. I'm into it. I don't think this is going to be like an expensive card. You could probably pick these up for, I don't know, probably $1 after set release. But it's fine. I would play it. Specific decks, but I would play it. I would not say it's a new Trespasser because you don't drain life or gain life. That is a very big part of Trespasser. Malevolent Witchkite, 4 colorless, black for a 5/4 Dragon Warlock. I think that's the first time we've seen those words on a card together. Flying. When this card enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and tokens. Then draw that many cards. Ooh. This is fun. So it's a 6 mana 5/4 flyer. But you can sacrifice artifacts, enchantments, or tokens and get that many cards. You could sacrifice rolls. You could sacrifice just regular 1/1s, rats maybe that can't block at that point in the game. There's a lot. There's a lot you could do with this. And again, I don't think you can play a lot of them. This is like a 1 or 2 of at best in a deck. But I will say, if you happen to be playing a deck that can generate a lot of treasure, then you could use treasure to just ramp into this, and then whatever treasure's left over or whatever, you could sacrifice and get a couple of cards, and that could be kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know. This is this one's a tough one for me. I feel like this is playable, but somewhere in the back of my brain, I'm feeling like this is better than I'm giving it credit for, and mostly because of treasure. So yeah, I'm probably going to try to squeeze this into a deck at some point just to see how I feel about it. But I feel like it has a lot of potential. Like, I already kind of like it, and I feel it might like be better than I think it is. Rankle's Prank. 2 colorless, black. Choose 1 or more. Each player discards 2 cards. Each player loses 4 life. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Yeah, about that. This card's going to be very annoying. Card's also probably going to be very good. And if you can find a way to gain life to where the life loss doesn't hurt you as much, finding ways to recast this could be pretty powerful. Doesn't get exiled from the graveyard, so if you have any type of trickery there, it's still good. Yeah, this card, it's interesting, right? Because if you're playing a discard deck, this kind of fits that. If you're playing some mid-rangey or control deck, or maybe something where you're making tokens, your opponent's not, you don't care about sacrificing 2 creatures, but I could cripple them. Just a 4/4 straight up is also, or a 4 life loss straight up, it's still a big deal. And I'm only talking about 60 card, right? Like you go into Commander and then you start having another conversation of making everybody discard 2 cards or everybody losing 4 life. Like this is kind of cool. And what I like about this card is it's not like good enough that everybody playing Commander is going to rush to play it. It's not good enough that every 60 card player goes, oh, I have to consider this card when deck building. But it's good enough that you may have to be aware that it exists because it's going to pop up every once in a while on the ladder and it's going to annoy the crap out of you when it happens, but not necessarily going to be a dominant card in the format. Let's see. We're getting close to the end of black because we're in the S's. Spectre of Mortality. 3 colorless black for a 3/3 creature spectre, hence being a Spectre of Mortality. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you can exile 1 or more creature cards from your graveyard. When you do, each other creature gets -X/-X till end of turn, where X is the number of cards exiled this way. Huh. So you can basically play the Spectre, remove like 3 creatures from the graveyard, give everything else -3/-3, and then you just have a Spectre. I mean, I guess. But like, I guess when I see cards like this, my question becomes, why am I not just playing some sweeper? You know, like, would I rather have this or have Gix's Command? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm only going to remove a couple of creatures and kill 2/2s or 3/3s anyway, like, wouldn't I rather have Gix's Command? Or another turn, and then I could cast whatever the black-white one or whatever, right? That destroys all creatures with Cleave. So it's like, that's a thing. Yeah. This is one, again, I hope I'm wrong and there's more cards that are playable than not, but this one's one I just look at and go like, I don't get it. It's, if there was some other version of standard, and not even if we had the 2-year standard, I don't think this would still be good enough. I think this would be good enough in another year when we get to the other rotation, maybe. But now it's going to have to wait at least 2 years. So I don't know. I don't think this card's good enough for most constructed play. Spiteful Hexmage. 1 black for a human warlock, 3/2. Okay, this probably has a drawback. When Spiteful Hexmage enters the battlefield, create a cursed roll token attached to a target creature you control, and it gets turns it into a 1/1, being cursed. Yeah, I don't know. Like a 3, like, so it's a 3/2 for 1, but you don't necessarily want to play it on turn 1, right? Because then you just paid a 1/1 for 1. Or you maybe do play it on turn 1, but then you have something that cares about removing rolls or cares about something having a roll and getting a bonus or whatever. So that's a possibility. You could also play something on turn 1 that's already a 1/1 and just has some ability. Then play this, or even 2 of these on turn 2, and then just put both of your roll tokens on the other thing that's already a 1/1. So yeah, there's probably some situations or worlds where this is fine. But I don't think it's stellar or crazy on its own. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's totally possible, but I don't know. I'm not. It is a human too. That's the other thing. I think this card is playable. I just don't know in what. All right. Or do we have a deck that even cares about warlocks? I believe this is like the 3rd warlock we've seen. That could be a thing too. And are we done with the black cards? No, there's another one here. Virtue of Persistence. Oh, is that so every color got a virtue, I guess? 5 colorless black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Wow, that's already good. Lockwell Scorn. It's a colorless and a black sorcery adventure. Target creature gets -3/-3 until the turn. What? For real? Like, why would you not just play this card? Seriously. this card, like, the removal option is more than acceptable. Like, it's a sorcery, so there's at least that. It's not instant speed. But 2 mana, give something -3/-3, and randomly you also gain 2 life, right? So you can buy plenty of time to get to the later stages of the game. And then late game, you're just like, okay, cool. I'm going to get one of those creatures I killed, right? It's from a graveyard. It's not even your graveyard. Yeah, I could see a lot of black decks just rocking like 2 of these. I could see every commander black deck playing this. Like, this card, for real, this card's good, y'all. Like, I'm not even joking. I would not be surprised if this is a, like, $25, $30 commander card in a couple of years. Like, because then we already have the what was the card? It was a white-black card. It had split mana. It was Orzhov mana, and it costs, like, almost the same. I think it costs, like, 6 or something. And, like, it just returned a creature from a graveyard, right? It didn't even have the sorcery part on it. Like, yeah, this card's good. This card's good. I can't even, like, make fun of this card. This card's good. Yeah, I'm just sitting here, like, in bewilderment that this card exists. I mean, we're already playing all the other things to try to get stuff out of graveyards. So we have, like, Phyrexian Portal. We're already reanimating our own stuff with the battle that does it, right? We already, and granted, those cost, like, well, the portal costs 9, but the battles cost, like, 5 or whatever. There's a few reanimator spells that you can get tricky and get it down to 4 cost or whatever. But the fact that this enchantment just does it every single turn, that's good. That's actually really good. Also, as we're wrapping up the black cards, we will, if you're here late to the stream or you're going to be here later, we're going to still cover the other cards throughout the set. We've already done white and blue. So if you are watching this on video, you could just check out those videos. Also, if you haven't yet, consider being a YouTube member. That actually really helps me out a lot. And I have some levels as little as like 99 cents. I also have an upper level one. If you want to get your decks reviewed, get your decks featured on the channel, all that stuff, just check out the details. Or if you want to support me and get something cool for yourself, I do have merchandise in the little thing down below. You should check that out. But yeah, that's it. We're going to move on and do some red cards. Yeah, thanks for all for sitting through this, because I'm kind of basically like doing a live video here with y'all as I go through all this. So if it's weird that I'm just like talking to nobody, that's what I'm doing at that point. It's way weirder whenever you're recording in your studio and there's literally nobody to even hear you. And you're just like, yeah, I talk to myself a lot when you're recording. That's the weird life of a content creator. Also, welcome all 40 of you. We've gotten up to like 50 people in this stream that I didn't announce. I just did this on a whim. Decided we're going to review all the rares and mythics in this set. And y'all seem like are having a good time, so I appreciate it. Delaney says, between this, I think we're talking about the black enchantment we just saw, and the extra shield roll, the tutor, yep. Wizards really decided to give black mono red's number. Yeah, it's going to be a wild time. It really is. Like, mono black already has a lot of tools. Hey, but here's the thing. For as much as we've joked and said, oh, why are they giving black more stuff or whatever? Part of the conversation is really going to be, what does black even play? Right? Because it's not like there's a lot of room in those lists right now. We're already like nitpicking things on like, do you get to play Gix or not? Right? Are you playing the 6/6 flyer or not? Are you playing any of the planeswalkers or not? Right? Like, you're already so tight for space. Where do you find room for those 2 new enchantments? Because you probably want to play those, but also find room for the new tutor, beseech the whatever, right? Like, something's got to give at some point. Because, like, and that's kind of the thing when we look at these sets and we're doing set reviews. I always tell people, take everything with a grain of salt, right? I should probably record this and include it because it's just good information. But yeah, one of the things I try to tell people is anytime you see set reviews, whether it's me or anybody else, you're going to probably hear 5 or 6 different opinions sometimes about one card. And none of us know if we're going to be right. We're all making predictions without even knowing what the metagame is going to look like. Because even if we go through this set and each of us pick a different 20 cards that are good, they can't all be good and playable, right? Especially now in standard, because we're just going to add on to 2 other years of cards. So a deck's not, let's say we pick 5 good red cards, the red decks aren't automatically going to play all 5 of those new cards because some of the other cards are still good. They might pick 1 or 2. They might shift their deck a certain way. Now, it's possible you will see all of those cards in some red deck, but not all those cards are going to be adopted by every deck because there's just not room. But yeah, for those of you that are new, just joining us, we have been covering all the cards from Eldraine, all the rares and mythics. We've already done white and black and blue. We are on to the red cards. And if you would like to share any comments, you have any crazy ideas that I didn't mention, feel free to post them in the comments down below. If you are live and watching this, if there's an uncommon or something that you wanted to see me talk about, let me know. I'll see if I can find it if we're still in that color, and we will talk about it. Otherwise, remember to like the video, like the stream. That helps out so much. And, you know, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because I put up stuff literally every single day. And buy some merchandise. Become a YouTube member. There's actually benefits. You should check it out. All right. So our first rare from this set is Charming Scoundrel. Colorless and a red for a 1/1 with haste. When Charming Scoundrel enters the battlefield, it's also a human rogue, by the way. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. You can discard, then draw, create a treasure, create a wicked token attached to target creature you control. I believe wicked is it gets +1, or when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 if its power's 3 or less. So that's actually pretty sweet. Also, thank you for a new member for joining there, Shannon Bailey. That is or is that you? Is that one of those? Oh, it's the, oh yeah, you're playing with the VR thing in your picture. That's cool. You're live recording for video by, oh, that's cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a turn 1, 3/2 warlock. Effectively, right? Well, it's a 2-mana 1/1, which is actually pretty cool with haste. And yeah, I don't know. Like this is where we were just talking about, right? Like, where do red cards want to play this, right? Or what decks want this? Because you get to rummage, right? You draw and discard. That's cool. Or discard, then draw. You get to create a treasure, and there's going to be a lot of decks that care about treasure or tokens or whatever, artifacts. But you also get to put a roll on something, right? So this is a card that could fit into a few different decks, depending on what you're trying to do. But I don't know if regular mono red actually wants this. Now, we have played a couple of decks that were Gruul and Jund that cared about haste. And this does have haste, so it could fit into those decks while also giving you some other really cool ability. So this is actually pretty neat. So it's a cool card. I don't know how good it is, but I think it's actually very playable, just maybe not in the decks we're immediately thinking it would be. Shannon also says, hi, thanks for the set review. I'm doing the pre-release next week. That is awesome. I hope everybody has fun at the pre-release next week. Also, I think sometime next week, I'm going to have a video coming out that gives you 6 tips to prepare for the pre-release in case you've never been to one, to help you out with that as well. Because I just stay busy, apparently. Decadent Dragon. 2 colorless, red, 4/4 dragon, flying trample. Whenever Decadent Dragon attacks, create a treasure token. Okay, all right. We already know that's good. And then it has a black instant adventure called Expensive Taste, 2 colorless and a black. Exile the top 2 cards of your library of target opponent's library. Face down. You can look at those and play those as long as they remained exiled. Okay. So this is interesting, right? Because the adventure part is an instant, and we have versions of this card already, and people like playing this, right? They're usually blue or blue-black or whatever. But people like this, right? You get to exile the top 2 cards of your opponent's library, and then you get to play them. Or the current one is it has flashback, but you choose one of the top 2 or 3, and you could flash it back and do it again, right? The thing is, you do have to have the right color mana to cast it, though, on this. However, the dragon does make treasure to allow you to play those cards. This has trample. We know getting to attack and making treasure is good. Again, if you have a deck that just cares about treasure, this fits that whole theme, generating more treasure. I'm into this card. This card's just solid, really, by itself. Like, if you have nothing else to do and it's in your hand on turn 3, right? Let's say you're leaving up mana to I don't know, lightning strike something or go for the throat. Your opponent doesn't give you a target or whatever on 3, and you're just like, okay, cool. During your end step, I just want to look at 2 of your cards. And then on your turn, if you have the ability to play one, maybe you do. If not, you're like, great, I'm just going to make a 4/4 dragon. Like the fact that it costs 3 for the adventure and then 4 for the dragon is perfect, right? So you can play both of those on time if you don't need to do anything else. Or you just straight up play the dragon and then you have a sizable card that's generating value every time you attack. Like, this is actually really cool. This is a good card. And if you play a dragon deck or whatever, this fits perfectly into that because your 4/4 now lets you play a 6/6, right? And we know a lot of dragons are 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. So you play your 4/4, you attack, you play a land, now you have 6, now you can play an even bigger dragon. So even that works in Commander. Yeah, just a good card. I'm digging that. Let's see what else Red has to offer. Oh, this one I do know. We were just talking about, okay, so Food Fight. Colorless and a red, enchantment. Artifacts you control have pay 2, sacrifice this artifact. It deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of permanents named Food Fight you control. The thing about this I found interesting was, what are we trampling over with the other dragon? Fairies. There's going to be a lot of fairies with 1 and 2 toughness. So we're definitely trampling over fairies. Possibly spirit tokens as well. But it doesn't care. This card doesn't care about just food, right? It's called Food Fight, but it doesn't care about just food tokens. So if you have a lot of things that are generating treasure, like the dragon and the other rogue we just saw or whatever, then when this comes out, cool, during your opponent's instep, you're like, fire one of these off, shoot you for 2, shoot you for 2, shoot you for 2, right? If you have multiples of these, then it's awesome, right? Because now every one of them is 2 damage. So like this is a cool thing. I like this. You could actually, in a perfect world, Magic Christmas Land probably would never work, but you could generate a deck that's a red-based control deck that's playing food fights, things that make tokens and make treasure, and maybe planeswalkers, and then you're using some planeswalker tokens and food fight as your win conditions or whatever. Like there's some weird things you could probably do with this card. I'm digging it. It's pretty cool, and I like the flavor of it for the set, which is kind of cool. And it's got like a dwarf just flying over a cafeteria table at a goblin for some reason, which isn't really a food fight. He's really kind of still going to stick him in the face with this weird horn looking thing, but still. Paul has been a member for 9 months. It says, "Happy Thursday, PD. All's well." It is well right now. We are talking about new cards and having a blast. And people keep coming through for the stream, and I appreciate it because this was definitely unscheduled. All right, so we got Godric, Cloaked Reveler, a very regal looking card. This is some cool artwork, actually. He's 1 colorless, red, human noble, legend, obviously. 3/3 with haste. So far, so good. As long as 2 or more non-land permanents entered the battlefield under your control this turn, this card is a dragon with base power 4/4 flying, and dragons you control get 1/1 until or 1. You can pay a red and give it +1/+0 to end the turn. So fire breathing, basically. Yeah, this card's solid. Again, if you have something that cares about making treasure, you're making 1/1 tokens, you're doing all this stuff. Yeah, this card's just good. The other thing I just realized too about this, it's not a sorcery or anything like that. So you could do it during, like if you had a way to instant speed generate treasure or flash in 2 tokens or whatever, you could turn this defensively into a 4/4. Or you could attack first and then flash something in and make 2 things. Or, because we just saw the dragon, right? Like you played a creature, you attack with it and your dragon makes a treasure. Now you've had 2 things come into play, and now you have 2 4/4 dragons. And you can now blow up the treasure to make each of those dragons have +1/+0, right? Yeah, because it's dragons you control. It's not even like this card gets. So yeah, this has some synergy with a few things in the set already. Like, this card's kind of cheeky good. I kind of like this. And we just put up a deck today that played like Samet and Squee and the Pugilist, or cards that are attacking and also making tokens, right? Or even Urabrass Forge guarantees you a token, and then your new thing's going to automatically be a thing, so that counts as 2, right? There's a lot of ways you could get this into a dragon, into a 4/4 very easily. And it starts out as a 3/3, which is not like the easiest thing to kill. So, yeah, I'm into this card. This card's cool. This card cool. I like it. I like it. Let's see what else red provides. What is this guy? Oh, I saw a picture of this. I didn't know what it was. So Kellen the Fey-Blooded. 2 colorless and a red. Human fairy, 2/2. Double strike. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Fey-Blooded. It has a white sorcery adventure, birthright boon for a colorless and a white. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. I'm a little torn on this card because my first thought is it's actually okay on its own because you have stuff like all the rolls putting things on, and rolls count as auras. Now, granted, you can only have one aura or one roll at a time on this card, but even giving all your other creatures +1/+0 and this card itself having double strike and a bunch of the rolls already give it +1/+1. So you could have a 3/3 double striker and all your other stuff can be +1 very easily. So a pretty reasonable card. But the sorcery part of it on the adventure actually kind of says, hey, I sort of want to play more auras and equipments because my cards get benefited by me having those. So, because like on turn 2, you would use it to go find whatever, right? A sword or whatever you're going to go find. But then you play this on 3, and then you don't really get to put the thing you search for on it until turn 4. That feels a little bit slow for a deck that cares about all my other creatures getting +1/+1 or having double strike or something like that, right? So I almost feel like where this might excel, like I said, is a deck that is just cool having this card and happens to have rolls or 1 or 2 equipment or 1 or 2 auras, something like that, and be fine. I don't know how many. Now, let me back that up a second. There is, because we're not rotating standard, there is a possibility of playing stuff like Rabid Battery is a thing you could play, and that's easy to just equip onto something. There's the swords, right, that give double strike, but it already has double strike. But you know, if you just need to equip something, so like, yeah, maybe it's a thing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I think a lot of people are excited about this. I'm not there, and I feel like I'm missing something if everybody else is going to be excited about it, but I'm not. Again, Commander, probably great, right? Because you already have a bunch of commanders that care about equipment. But yeah, I don't know. For 60 card, I'm a little light on that one, if you will. Ogre Chitterlord. That is a name. 4 colorless, red for a 6/5 Ogre Warrior with Menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create 2/1/1 black rat creature tokens that can't block. Then if you control 5 or more rats, each rat you control gets +2/+0. Ah, man. This to me just comes down to how good are rats in standard, right? This is one of those ones that's hard to judge because I don't think we know enough about how we're all going to be using cards in the set yet, what the format's going to look like. Do we want to commit a board of a bunch of just rats that can't block against mono red, mono black right now? Hell, even mono white, right? Is that a good thing? And it's 6 mana. There's no way to make it cheaper without some outside trickery, but then that would mean your deck would have to have less things that care about rats. Man, it's cool for what it's trying to do, but this feels almost like one of those times that it's on theme, but probably just going to be best and limited. Because it's 6 mana. I mean, I don't know, because like, if for some reason your opponent hasn't been killing that many of your rats over the previous like 4 turns or something, and then you play this, I mean, having all your rats be +2/+0 is a real thing. But if they have removal, have they just been sitting on it for some big thing to show up? Maybe your Rat Lord and this guy because they don't need to waste it on 1/1s, right? So like, I don't think I'm excited about this one. I just feel like it's 6 mana. I almost want it to do more. And that's weird to say because it is giving you 2 rats and then you attack and get 2 rats. But like, I just, I don't know. It's hard for me to get there. And I honestly kind of hope I lose to it to make me eat my words. What am I drinking? It is tea, actually. Raging Battle Mouse. That is a very angry looking mouse. Now that I'm looking at the artwork. Colorless and a red 2/1 mouse, obviously. It's actually interesting that they made this a mouse and not a rat. When you have other stuff that cares about rats, particularly, I hate when that happens. Like we had a while back where there was like dogs and hounds, and it was like, why are they not all dogs or not all hounds? Right? It's weird to just be like, well, we just don't want this card to get the bonus from something or whatever, so we're just going to give it a different, similar creature type, but not the same. Like I hate that. Why is this not just a rat? Like let's just have rats, and then if somebody's building a rat deck, they get a benefit of a cool other sweet cards. It doesn't make a lot of sense to just not allow it to be a rat. But whatever. That's just a side rant. It's a 2/1 for 2. The second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. And then at the beginning of your combat on your turn, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield, target creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Our second spell deck's any good right now? I feel like we've had a bunch of those that care about you casting your second thing or when the second spell gets cast or whatever. And those just haven't gone anywhere in a long time. I mean, if there's enough in Eldraine to make it worth it, then this card's probably stellar. Otherwise, it's just a 2/1 for 2, and you'll get to give something +1/+1 every turn or every other turn or whatever. It's also weird that the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less. So you have to try to play some. I don't. Yeah. I don't think I'm excited about this card. I'm almost. The more I'm thinking about it, I'm almost kind of mad this card's a rare. Right? I think people are going to open this card and just not be excited about it. And on top of that, we decided to not make it a rat. Like I don't know why it's not a rat, because then it would at least have some extra value. Because then being in a rat deck and extra rats coming into play would allow this celebration to trigger more often and possibly matter more, which would be great. But with it being a mouse, I'm not feeling it. I'm not there. Isn't this fine in a prowess deck? Like, maybe? But the prowess decks aren't even playing a lot of spells with colorless mana in them, right? They're playing all the cheap spells anyway. Their stuff all costs 1 or 2. And they'd rather play cards like the third path guy, right? That when you play a thing, you make a 1/1 artifact soldier. They're playing Monastery Swiftspear that when you make another one, they're playing the 2/2 prowess thing that you can flip to the backside and has double prowess and ward, right? They're playing all that stuff that are all just better than this card. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's no reason for this not to be a rat and at least give it a shot that people might want to play with it. It's very weird to me. I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I'm out. All right. We got another dragon in this set. The Realm Scorcher Hellkite. 4 colorless, red, for a 4/6 dragon. Has bargain where you can sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token when you cast it. It has flying. It has haste. When it enters the battlefield, if it was bargained, add 4 mana in any combination of colors. And then you can play a colorless and a red. This deals 1 damage to any target. So you can play this for 6. Sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token. Then you get 4 mana back immediately. That you could either deal 2 damage to something or just cast something else. I don't even know if that's good enough. Like, that's a lot of extra mana you're getting. And I'm still looking at this card and going on like, turn 6, is that good enough? Like, this is one of those things where the numbers matter on the card, right? Because you sort of look and go, if this was a 5/6, how much better is it than being a 4/6? Right? Like, it's literally 1 point of damage difference. But it's like, that feels so much more significant. Or if this is a 5/5 versus a 4/6. Now, admittedly, by being a 4/6, it doesn't get hit by stuff like Nahiri's, Warcrafting, the 3 mana deal 5 spells or whatever, like any of those. Like, you dodge all that, which is kind of cool. And it does have haste, so it's not like it's nothing. But I don't know. I'm not there. Like, getting 4 mana back feels very good though, because then it's almost like this sort of costs 2. And then for a total spend, realistically, of just 6 mana, you get a lot of volume from your cards. But I kind of also have to have another card that needs the mana at that point. You know what I mean? So like, this is a mythic I'm not excited about. Now, if I could sacrifice any number of cards and get the mana for each of those, that would be great. Or even feels like bargain up to 2 or something, then maybe. But with just 1, I'm not really feeling that too much. All right. That's moving on. Looks like a couple more rares here. Red Cap Gutter Dweller. Well, if you're a Goblin fan, we have a Goblin Warrior. It's a 4 mana, 3/3 menace. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 black rat creature tokens that can't block. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on this card and exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. This actually seems okay. I mean, like, you get to just make rats. Like, you play it for 4 mana, you get 5/5 worth of creatures, right? 2 1/1s, though they can't block, and you get a 3/3. Then during your upkeep, you can start sacrificing stuff and then possibly get to play an extra card and get a 1/1 on this thing. And if you have anything else that's generating tokens, sacrifice another creature. So it has to be a creature token, not just a token. But if you have anything that's generating tokens, especially ones that don't block, you could actually do some decent stuff with this. It's a little slow to get to do what it wants to do, but it's not bad. And I think there are a few goblins still left that you could do goblin things, because I feel like I worked on a goblin deck a couple weeks ago and it was just like just short, just didn't have enough quality creatures. This is the type of thing that could help fix some of that. So I'm kind of into it. I don't think it's great, don't get me wrong, but it's better than a lot of options that goblins have right now. And I think it can fit into some of those builds and at least give them a chance. Daniel says, I just realized the copied Hellkite wouldn't count as bargains, so I wouldn't get 8 mana. Yeah, exactly. Because that dragon, you can only bargain when you cast it. So if you copy it, you don't get to bargain. Let's see. Goblins just don't have the pieces in standard. I think that's the thing, though. So I'm saying if this and there's another goblin or two that are just playable in the set, along with all the other removal, then it becomes like a real thing. I think right now they're just a couple of cards light, which is what I was saying. But this could help them by giving them a sizable body and a way to get extra cards, which is good. Rotisserie Elemental. And okay, this this is the goofy type of art you expect to see in this set, right? It's literally a fire elemental, like cooking, I don't know what that is, like some type of horned bird, like goose or something. I don't know what, it's not a goose, it's something else. But literally has a rotisserie in one hand, cooking stuff on its head. Like this is sweet artwork. 1/1 for 1, elemental with menace. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a skewer counter on it. Then you can sacrifice it. If you do, exile the top X card your library, exit the number of skewer counters on the rotisserie elemental. You can play those cards this turn. The fact that we have skewer counters is freaking hilarious. All right. So 1/1 for 1 with menace is actually playable. I think the question here, though, is I'm not sure. This is where like the bigger standard becomes a problem for some cards, right? Because obviously this wants to be in some type of mono red, maybe Gruul or Rakdos aggro decks, right, in the 1 slot. But you start looking at other things we have, right? We have the black cleric that turns into a Phyrexian guy or whatever, right? We've got the Monastery Swift Spear. You have the vampire that makes a blood token and hits for 1. We even have a goblin that if it connects, you can sacrifice it, deal damage to a thing. That's a lot. That's 4 or 5 quality 1/1s, right? And there's still like a couple more in green, right? There's the 2/1 wolf. There's the one that gets bigger every time you play a creature that's got power or toughness larger. Like, I don't know if this gets to be played for at least another year, sadly. It's a good card, but unless you have something I think that particularly cares about menace or elementals, possibly drawing cards. Well, it's not even that. You just exile the cards. You don't even draw them, right? Yeah, so that doesn't even. Yeah, I don't think this gets played much, sadly. I don't think it's going to see much action. Patty Lady says, "What? No rotation being an issue for new cards? You don't say." Yeah, absolutely. They announced back, I believe, in May or June that there will not be a standard rotation this year. Now standard is going to be 3 years. So everything that came out that is standard legal right now will remain standard legal until the next fall set. So either September, October next year. Then the stuff that point that's 3 years old will be falling off of standard, and standard will always be a 3-year rotation. So we'll just be adding 4 or 5 more sets to standard before we get to the next rotation. So for those you don't know, there you go. Now you know. But yeah, bad times for rotisserie elemental. I don't think that card's gonna see much action. So sorry, which is sad because it's a really cool card. I like the premise of it. I like the art of it, but it's I don't think it's checking enough boxes for us. Scalding Viper, colorless and a red for a 2/1 elemental snake. So if you have a snake deck, here you go. Also another elemental, so that could be a thing. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, this deals 1 damage to that player. Has a sorcery adventure of a colorless and a blue, steam clean. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Now, see, this is where, like, we were just talking about that mouse a while ago, right? That's 2 red or 2 colorless, same cost, a colorless and a red for a 2/1. But this has a more likely impactful ability, I would think. And it comes with a now sorcery speed, mind you, but it does come with an adventure that's also useful, right? Because now bouncing a non-land permanent is a real thing because we're going to have people putting auras on stuff, putting rolls on stuff, right? So basically resetting a card sometimes might actually be pretty good. And then you get to play a 2/1 that might just get to do 3 or 4 damage over the next turn or two. So like, this is where I was like I said, being upset about the mouse not being a rat. It's like, at least if you made it a rat, it has more of a chance to be played. Just being a mouse, I don't know who else wants to play that card right now. Even if I cared about playing multiple spells a turn, I don't think that's the card that makes the cut. Now, I don't particularly think this will always make the cut, but this card is good enough on its own as a 2/1 for 2 that some red decks that are maybe playing heavy burn, they could be playing the 2 different creatures. Like if you play a spell, you deal an extra damage to the opponent, right? Just you're doing that consistent damage every time your opponent's doing something. This could fit those style of decks, and you don't even care about the blue part. You know what I mean? So yeah, now admit it, I don't think this card is going to be gangbusters. I don't think it's going to go like be played in every red deck, but I'm not going to be surprised if I see it with that sub theme of just like constant pinging damage for everything that happens. And we have Song of what is this? Song of Totentrans. Like that's okay. Don't know who Totentrans is, but there you go. It's red X sorcery. Create X/1/1 black rat creature tokens that can't block. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Wait. Y'all. Are we agreeing right now live on stream that we're just going to call this Furball? Like, seriously. Because it's basically a fireball, but we're doing it with creatures. Right? We're all on board with this, right? Everybody in favor say aye. Because, like, this is literally, it's fireball, but with creatures. Right? That's all this is. It's red, pay X. X could be like 5. You make 5 1/1 black rats, and they have haste until end of turn. Actually, all your stuff has haste, so if you have anything else that made tokens or whatever, like, this seems fine. Like, this is more than fine, actually. This is just good. Like, if I have anything that cares about tokens coming into play, anything that buffs tokens, if I already have, like, I don't know, wedding announcement that's already flipped to the backside, so now I'm making 2/2s instead of 1/1s. Like, there's a lot of things I could do with this. And I don't even need to be playing a rat deck. I could be playing some mono red, red, white, gruel, whatever, just aggro something that cares about having a finishing card, and now I can just make a pile of things and attack. Also, cool ability, you can make like 5 or 6 things and then just split up your attacks against multiple planeswalkers even, right? If you're at that stage of the game where you can't kill your opponent, you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to send like 3 at Liliana and 2 at the Wandering Emperor or whatever it is, right? That's a thing. So like this is cool. I'm on furball with this one. I'm yeah, this is furball for sure. Anything that cares about hasty things like Samut. Oh, that's cool too. Yeah, Samut. This is like 4 or 5 bonus cards. That's a good call. I'm going to make some sort of god-awful Gruul deck that builds around the green enchantments, the triple mana from basic lands and furball. Yeah, that's possible too, right? You just get to like 20 mana and then just go ham with this thing. Yeah, this is actually really cool. This is going to be fun, a fun rat dose deck. I see what you did there. That's funny. Yeah, this is cool. I like this card. This might be one of the most fun red cards. Probably my second favorite to the dragon, actually, that we saw so far today. And let's see, do we have any other red rares we need to talk about our mythics? We do indeed still have another one. So we've got Virtue of Courage. 3 colorless red enchantment. When a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you can exile that many cards from the top of your library. You may play those cards this turn. And then it has an instant, a colorless, and a red to deal 2 damage to any target. This is interesting. Okay, so I think, again, this is one you could just play, right? Now, the instant part of it, the adventure, isn't great. But it's also not bad. It's 2 damage to any target, so you can shoot an opponent or a creature or a planeswalker. Or, honestly, a battle, if you want to shoot that. For 2 mana at instant speed. That's actually mostly fine. But then late game, if you have any burn spell, it's just like, cool. And it's not even that you get to see a card. It's for however much damage you did, you get to see that much. Yeah, because whenever source deals damage to an opponent, you may exile that many cards. So this is actually kind of cool. This feels better or worse than Bone Crusher. I think it's just different, right? And they may not even go into the same decks. But also, the other options, you could play this and Bone Crusher in the older formats. You know, because you're still getting the 2 damage, whatever, but Bone Crusher will give you a body. However, this might be in a type of deck where you're playing a control type thing, and you're not really actually playing creatures of any kind, right? So if you are playing, like, I don't know, just making up cards here because I haven't made a deck list, obviously. But like, let's say Stintia Bloodhaul that's just like getting tokens and maybe sacrificing for damage. And you've got a couple of planeswalkers doing some damage. And you're playing sweepers like Burn Down the House or whatever. Like, this is a viable card in that type of list. Because all your removal, everything else is going to be damage of some kind anyway. And then now you're just getting, once this sticks, you're just starting to steamroll, right? Hit your opponent. I get to look at 2 cards. Now I get to play a thing. Actually, I just realized something else about this card. You exile that many cards, and it's not pick one, play one. You could play all of those. So if you were to play with fire your opponent, you get to look at 2 cards. You could just play both of them. Like, this is actually pretty cool. Yeah, these Virtues are really good cards. They're just really good. Now, I don't know how many you play, but I think however many you decide to play is going to come down to how good the adventures are. But this could be one where you play 3 or 4, right? Because the adventure is just fine. Same thing on the black one, right? The black one, you probably go ahead because it gives something -3/-3, and you get to gain life. So yeah, you might just play 4 of those. Truthfully, yeah, these are good. All right, what do we got else? Oh, it looks like that. Looks like we hit the end of the red cards. So we're gonna move on to the green cards. If you didn't know, if you just got here, we've already reviewed the others. There will be videos on the channel. If you're watching on video, be sure to check out the other colors as we review them all for the set, all the rares and mythics. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you want to be a member and get benefits, check all those out. And also check out the merchandise. All right, moving on to the green cards. Man, this has been a Y'all are sticking this out with me on a just random thing. We're already about 2 hours in. I knew this was going to be long. I figured it'd be take about 2.5 to 3 hours, but oh man, fun stuff here. All right. I'm surprised I'm still able to talk. I've been going like nonstop this whole time. All right, so getting back into the reviews here, we are reviewing all of the cards in Eldraine. We are now on the green cards. Be sure to check out the other videos if you want to see the other colors. Remember, like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Be sure to like the video, especially all that are watching on stream right now. Please like this. This helps out a lot. Like the video. It'll help a bunch. But yeah, just disclaimer, this is my first time seeing most of these cards. We're kind of just pie in the sky speculating what we can do with these, what we think is good or bad, what decks they go into, and just having fun with the set because I'm getting to see the cards just like you. So let's get going. We're going to talk about Blossoming Tortoise, 2 colorless, green, 3/3 turtle. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards, then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to activate. Land creatures you control get +1/+1. Ooh, lots of things to say about this card. It's one kind of a ramp card, right? Because you get to mill stuff, put a land into play. High chance you'll get at least 1. In multiples, you get to reduce, because this doesn't say reduce cost down to 1. This says reduce cost by 1. So if you have 2 or 3 of these, you could have some land costs that cost almost nothing, right? And then land creatures get +1/+1. So that means like with 2 of these, the foundries you activate for 0 and they're 3/3s. So that's pretty sweet. We do have creature lands in this set, so that's a thing. You get to reduce part of their cost. It is a 4 mana 3/3, which feels a little bit bad, right? Because for 4 mana, you're not necessarily getting a lot, necessarily. This is... I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this card. Like, I want this card... Like, in my heart says, man, we could do some fun stuff with this card. And there's probably some weird combos by making the land activations not cost much. But my head says... But is that really good enough in most 60 card games these days? I'm thinking not. But I would really, really love to lose to this card. Like, I would love to be across the battlefield when somebody does something absurd with this, and then I lose. You know what I mean? Let's see. I don't care if it's not optimal. I'm putting this into my Titanium Mel deck. Yeah, and that's totally reasonable. Like, this does absolutely fit into those types of decks. And that was my first thought of where this probably ends up going, to be honest. And you get to activate the land 1 less as well, which is kind of fun. Let's see. If you're playing mono red and get that dragon, it does a lot of damage. Oh, the dragon's from the other video. Yeah. I'm making my Argoth mills cost only 2 or 3 and making 4/4 lands into 5/5s. Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I do think it has a place. I just know that even getting those decks to work right now has been a little bit of a struggle in the past. I don't know if this makes them better or easier. It's very possible that it does, to be honest. But I don't know that, and that's kind of where I'm like, we have to wait and see. Because we are adding another 4 mana thing to those decks to make them work as well. It's not like 4 is super cheap, you know? Especially with all the removal that's available in Standard right now. Let's see. Moving on. Let's see if we can find something more exciting. Bramble Familiar. This artwork looks like that fox thing is... Oh, it's a raccoon. It's just kind of like drawn in after the fact. Like, it's obviously supposed to be there. I just think the glow effect makes it look weird. But it's a colorless and a green for a 2/2 elemental raccoon. You can tap it to add a green, or you can pay a colorless and a green, discard a card, return it to its owner's hand. You have Fetch Quest, 5 green for a sorcery adventure, mill 7 cards, then put a creature, enchantment, or land from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. So it's a 2/2 for 2. So a grizzly bear that you can tap for mana, which is kind of where we are in Magic these days. There's 2 mana things that you tap, make mana. So it's not weird. For some reason... Oh, you know what? I get it. Paying a colorless and a green, you can return it to your hand. So now you can use the fetch quest if you don't need the mana anymore. I get what we're doing here. and then mill 7. Like, I mean, I guess if I want the mana creature, I kind of get the fetch quest for free, right? It's just add on, just tacked on to an okay creature I want. The scary thing, though, is I kind of want to play this in a deck that also plays stuff like Vorinclex, right? But I can't like mill myself with Vorinclex and mill myself with Fetch Quest. So I feel like one or the other is probably going to happen, but not both. But I don't think it's terrible. They have the option of having both in the deck. I think that's totally reasonable. And just having a 2/2 that ramps is probably okay. I could find a home for this. Because some of the other ramp creatures, we have 1/2s and we have 1/3s, but we don't have any that are 2 power right now, I don't think. For sure, not any that are 2/2s. There might be a random 2/1 or something, but this is probably okay. I don't think it's great, but it's okay. What I'm hoping is in whatever the other fairy tale set we get, where like the anamorphic animals or whatever, maybe we get something that cares about raccoons. But yeah, this is fine. I don't think it's stellar, but it's good enough. I will say, though, on the mill 7, it does say put a creature, enchantment, or land card from on the battlefield. If it was each, I think I'd be super excited about it, right? If you could find a creature, find a land, find enchantment, put them into play, that'd be awesome. But unfortunately, it says or, which makes it a pretty steep cost to get one thing. But what else do we have? Scrolling through here. Oh, I did see this one. This one's interesting. Elvish Archivist. A colorless and a green for an 0/1 Elf Artificer. Whenever one or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Elvish Archivist. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever one or more enchantments enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now, I get why the ability only triggers once, because it's probably to keep you from comboing out or doing something silly. So I at least get that. But an 0/1 for 2, that's tough. That's real tough. Like, you couldn't even give me a 1/1. You couldn't make it an 0/2. like, why did it have to be an 0/1? Like, this is so fragile. And I have decks that like playing artifacts, like putting +1/+1 counters on things. Like, this could still maybe find its way into those decks, but man, just playing an 0/1 with no real value of its own, that's tough. That's real tough. I can't. This makes me hurt a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if I'm there on this one. And again, it probably fits in some deck where once you get it, you're going to go ridiculous with it. But yeah, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to put this in a couple decks. But I'm going to be starting out with pretty low expectations. Okay. This card, I had a discussion about this card. So I have seen this one. But Feral Encounter, green, sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. You may cast the exiled card this turn. At the beginning of your next combat step this turn, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power up to 1 target creature you don't control. So here are my issues with this card. First thing, the card is Feral Encounter, right? We're seeing this, I'm assuming, big bad wolf type thing jumping out at a Red Riding Hood. So it already feels like it should be an instant. Why it's a sorcery, I do not know. The closest thing I've heard is like a judge say, well, it's easier templating or whatever. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure we could deal with this being as an instant. Because how nice would it be, like, during your opponent's end step, you're like, hey, I'm going to Feral Encounter. Cool. I'm going to exile a thing that I might be able to play next turn, right? That's the other thing, right? You're going to pay 2 mana and not even necessarily be able to play the best thing you find, because you just may not have enough mana left over. And then separately, when you get to your attack step, you can have one of your creatures bite another creature. There's no reason for this card to be a sorcery. We totally could have been like, just worded as during your, it actually even says that, right? Target your, it says at the beginning of your next combat phase. So it didn't have to say combat phase this turn. It could just say at the beginning of the next combat phase on your turn. And we'd be like, okay, cool. When it's my turn in my combat phase, then I get the bite part of this. Now, will this still get played? Very possible. Because getting this late in the game, worst case scenario, it's still a 2-mana sorcery that allows you to have a kill spell, right? Even if you don't find something you can cast, or the thing you cast gets countered, you at least still have a creature on the battlefield that's going to get to fight something or bite something. So that's good. Fight being both creatures hit each other, bite being your creature just gets them. So yeah, this isn't. Yeah, I'm just not feeling this. I'm not feeling it. Like I wanted. Man, if this was an instant, it would be so much better. So much better if it was an instant. It's just not here. I'm just not. Ugh. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. I wish. It's so close though, and like I said, it might still just be good enough as a sorcery bite spell with upside. You know what I mean? If you're playing some aggro deck that wants removal, you might just go, you know what? I can play this for removal, and then it still gives me a chance to get a bonus creature. I almost wish though that the card gave you the option of, if you don't play it, it just goes into your hand, because in a way, you kind of are being forced to overcommit just to get the bite part of it, right? Or you're just giving up a card, which is kind of terrible. Though, I guess on the other hand, it's a pseudo-free card, so I mean, I guess there's that. Would it be bad if the exile cards were castable forever even? I don't think so. I think that would be reasonable too. It would add more words to the card, but I think it'd be possible. Bonus creature only for a turn, so it's really not good until maybe 4 or 6. Yeah, that's the issue with it, right? So you can use it early as a removal spell, but then you can only cast like a 2 or 3 mana thing probably. So, the card's all right. It's all right. All right, let's see if we can find something we're going to have more fun and be excited about. Okay, this costs 6, so it probably does something. Gruff Triplets. 3 colorless, green, green, green. For Satyr Warrior. Oh, it's the Billy Goat's Gruff. That's what this is, right? The 3 Gruff Triplets. 3/3. Trample. When Triplets enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. When this dies, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to its power onto each other card named Gruff Triplets. Got it. Each other creature. So you get 9 power for 6 mana. You get 3 3/3s. And then in the event that one of them dies, you get to put the power of whatever died, so in this case 3, onto your other creature. So you get to turn 3 3s into 6 6s. I mean, this is something. A reason to play 3 blind mice, Delaney says. Maybe, but this is a good excuse to want to ramp into something, right? This I'm kind of excited about, like, because now you ramp into even as a late game card, you're like, okay, well, I got 9 power worth of things across 3 bodies late in the game, right? Your opponent sweeps the board, you're like, great, I have a 9/9. What do you want to do? And if they spot remove one of them, then instantly the others are 6 6s, right? So you went from having 9 power to having 12 power. And that's if you don't play a second one, right? Because then all of the things named Gruff Triplets will also get the 3 3s every time one dies. Or if you're really savvy and you have a way to sacrifice something, you could actually sacrifice one to turn however many of them into +3/+3s, and then sacrifice another one to give everything +6/+6 or whatever, and then it just gets dumb, right? So that's a thing. So yeah, this is a cool card. How good it is, I have no idea, but I could definitely see some decks where if I'm already doing some ramp type things, or I'm caring about treasure or whatever, like this could be a good way to just spend some of that mana and get a lot of upside, actually. So that one's at least a little bit exciting. What is this? Mosswood Dread Knight. Colorless and a green for 3/2. Human Knight. Oh, it's a knight in green. That's kind of cool. Trample. When this dies, you can cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. And the adventure is Dread Whispers for a colorless and a black sorcery. Draw a card and you lose 1 life. you know, this card is pretty strong. Right? The bad part, if you want to call it that, the adventure is just colors in a black, lose a life, draw a card. You pay 2, you get a 3/2 trampler, and then if it dies, then on the same turn it dies, from the way it reads, right? When it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn, even. So it didn't have to be this turn. So next turn, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna play the adventure again, lose a life, draw a card, and then now I could just pay 2 again and have a 3/2. This card's really good. Like this card's actually very good. Like, there's nothing to say bad about this card. Like, why this card isn't pre-ordering as like a $9 or $10 rare, I don't know yet. I think if you can find these for under $5 on release weekend, I'm not saying go out and buy a playset, but I might pick up at least 2 because I can't see how this card's bad. Now, it happens to be a knight, happens to be a human, so it might fit each of those creature type builds, theme decks, maybe. I don't know. But those are 2 relevant types we have to think about. But it's a way to draw cards. It's a reasonable creature, a 3/2 for 2 with trample. So if you have anything that pumps your stuff, that's a bonus. And then you just get to keep playing it. It's literally, unless they exile it, it's a creature that just doesn't die. Like, this is a cool design for a card. Like, you block, it dies. You're like, cool. Next turn, I'm going to draw a card, lose a life, replay a 3/2. Right? If I have nothing else to do, even. Like, that's the worst that happens. Like, I'm into this card. Like, I'm not going to lie. If I'm playing anything with black and green in it, it probably starts with 4 of this card. Seriously. This is actually really good. Actually, I'm a little dumbfounded by this card, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. The more I'm looking at it, I'm kind of like, why does this card exist? All right, Questing Druid. It's a colorless and a green for a 1/1 human druid. Whenever you cast a spell that's white, blue, black, or red, put a +1/+1 counter on Questing Druid. Okay, we've had versions of this in the past. The red side is a colorless and a red. Seek the Beast. Instant adventure. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until your next turn. You may play those cards. My issue with cards like this is they just don't seem to work out the way you want them to. I mean, we've tried a few different, when they've had like the Quirion Druids or whatever reprinted and stuff a couple of years ago, we tried that. It just, I think there was a Merfolk and Ixalan that had like a similar ability. Like we've done this a few times and it's just not great, right? Because are you really, I mean, I guess I almost feel like if this card did anything else, then it would probably be solid. But right now, it's almost like if you were playing a green red or green black deck that was more heavy red or heavy green than it, or I mean heavy black than it was green, then you go ahead and play this, and just like almost every spell you play is going to trigger this, right? Or if you build it in a deck that has a bunch of multicolor cards, that's the other option, right? You play a bunch of red green stuff, a bunch of red black stuff. I mean red green or black green stuff. Then you're just getting bonuses anyway, and getting the upside of being able to play Seek the Beast in your deck. So it's almost like if you're playing multicolor with green and you can cast Seek the Beast, great. Then maybe you consider this card. If not, I'm probably not that concerned with playing this card. I will just find other ways to draw cards. What do we got here? Another knight, actually. So Sentinel of the Lost Lore, colorless green, 3/4, elf knight. Actually, it's an elf as well, which is cool because elves are another deck that I have been very, very close on. I just needed like 1 or 2 more cards. So this is a 3/4 for 3. So we're already on the upside. When it enters the battlefield, you choose 1 or more, actually. So we could choose all of these if we wanted to. Return target card you own in exile that has an adventure to your hand. Put target card you don't own in exile that has an adventure on the bottom of somebody's library, opponent's library, and exile target player's graveyard. This card's good. The green got 2 good knights, apparently. Right? So you get a 3-mana 3/4, which by itself is already solid. And then you get to return an adventure. If you have an adventure sitting there that you haven't turned into a creature yet, you can just return it and reuse that adventure next turn. You can keep value away from your opponent, because if they have an adventure sitting out there, you can just put it on the bottom of the library. And then if they're doing any reanimator shenanigans or anything else, or flashback spells or whatever, you just get rid of their graveyard. It's like, this is actually really good. Yeah. Yeah, you can absolutely target your opponent's adventure. Like, that's the whole point of it, right? That's what Daniel's asking here. You can't target your opponent's exiled adventures. No, it literally put target card you don't own in exile that has an adventure on the bottom of the thing. So yeah, you totally can target your opponent's adventures. Says, I think it only to tuck away their creatures and enchantments that have adventures that are already on board. So, nope, it says from exile. And whenever you play an adventure, adventure goes into exile. So it's made specifically for those. But it could technically be any other card that's exiled that happens to have an adventure for some reason. Because there are a lot of cards that, like, exile this card, you can cast it your next turn, that sort of thing. So you could actually stop them from having other cards, potentially. But yeah, this card feels good. I mean, I like it. I like it. I will say, the art, the person barely looks like an elf. It's like a human with very pointy ears. But, you know, beside that, really cool. So I'm into it. All right, so green got at least a couple of things here. What is this? The Huntsman's Redemption. 2 colors and a green. Creates a 3/3 green beast creature token as the first chapter here on this saga. On chapter 2, you sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature or basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And then on the third chapter, up to 2 target creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Yeah, this is playable. I think, again, if we already have stuff that cares about tokens, or you're copying tokens or doing any of that stuff, well, just playing 3 to make a 3/3 beast is fine. And then you also get to go, possibly, if you get to keep a creature, sacrifice something, and then if you do, go find a creature out of your library. And then at the end, 2 creatures you control get +2/+2 and trample. I don't think this is stellar, don't get me wrong, but it's at least playable. And it's kind of like the most I could say about it. Now, do I think it'll show up in a lot of decks? Not likely. You know, this is one of those ones that if I already had a token type deck for maybe Commander, maybe I could justify room for this, because now I just get a tutor because I'm getting rid of some 1/1 or 2/2 I have in play. But for 60 card Magic, doesn't feel like the most exciting thing. So I'm probably not going to play this a bunch. But who knows? Maybe I have something that cares about Beast or something, and I at least consider it. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's good for limited that I just assume that's a thing. So, like, I leave that to other people to decide for the most part. Thunderous Debut. It's a 8 mana, so 6 colorless green. You can bargain where you can sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token. Look at the top 20 cards of your library. You can reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them. If the spell was bargained, put the revealed cards onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put the revealed cards into your hand and shuffle your library. Wow. Okay, so for 8 mana, if you're willing to sacrifice a thing, you can just get 2 things from your top 20 cards and put them into play. Man. You know, if I'm ramping hard enough, I can put 2 Gruff triplets into play. Like, that's kind of awesome, right? Or something that maybe gives my stuff haste and some other big creature. Possibly that could be a thing. Like, this feels cool. I just don't know what I'm doing with it. You know what I mean? I think that's the problem. Like, because 8's a lot. That being said, we're casting like Breach the Multiverse and whatever. So maybe 8's not that much anymore. But 8 is a big number. And we almost need them to be... You know what? If I was playing a deck that always ramping into like Tyrannix Rex and stuff, then this card's actually viable, I think. Or Titans and, you know, whatever. Things that have this like big value or can try to end the game when I get them. I think then this becomes some level of valuable. I think if all I'm doing is going and getting like a Vorinclex and something or whatever, that's just not enough to make it worth the investment and the risk of just like putting creatures out there might just die before I get real value out of them, you know? So you know, if I'm playing like the big in-game hitters, and I do have some decks that already ramp up and try to do that, one of these going in there basically can be the card that helps you in the game on the spot. So like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But I don't think this is a card you're going to play more than one of in a deck just because it costs 8. I mean, even if you have good ramp stuff in your deck, it's just a lot to invest. What else do we have? Okay, green has a virtue. Let's see what green gets here. Beautiful art though. Virtue of Strength, 5 and 2 green. So we got a 7 mana enchantment. If you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times that much mana instead. And it has Greenbrier Growth, which is 1 colorless sorcery. Return target creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. Green got the worst one of these. Yeah. And I don't think it's close. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you basically have a regrowth for 1 green mana. You can return a creature or land. It's not even any card. Like, if it lets you return any card from your graveyard to your hand, that at least makes Garenbrig Growth a little bit better. But this is just a creature or a land from a graveyard to your hand, not even to play or anything like that. And then you have to spend 7 just to be able to let you ramp up. Now, again, if your whole deck is trying to do just crazy ramping and we're trying to kill people with like a 32-point furball or something, congratulations, we found your card, right? But the difference is, for me, the other virtues are just better, right? Like the white one is, you know, or actually, yeah, because the white one's untapping stuff every turn and putting +1/+1s. The black one gets to kill things and you gain life, and then you get to reanimate something. The red one's letting you look at extra cards you can cast and getting to deal damage with the other thing. Like, the green just got the short end of the stick here. It's just not that good. Sad, but it ain't. Like, to be fair, green got some solid creatures, and that's usually green's jam anyway. But yeah, this Virtue of Strength doesn't really compare with the other ones, I don't feel like. And it looks like we have another rare in green. Wildwood Mentor. 2 colorless and a green for a tree folk that's a 1/1. Whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on this card. When this card attacks, a target attacking creature gets +X/+X until the turn where X is this card's power. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. How do we feel about this? It only gets a +1/+1 when a token enters the battlefield. So you have to play a bunch of junky or lower power creatures to make this one big. I feel like if it was when a creature enters the battlefield, man, it'd be so much better. But the other thing too is you can usually put a lot of tokens on the battlefield in a turn, and that could be pretty devastating too. Though it doesn't have trample or anything else, so even if you had like rabble rousing and you attack with 3 things, like this will get a bunch of bonuses, but you know, just can be chump blocked by other stuff. Yeah, like this is what I'd call like borderline playable, but you know, it's probably the last card I'm squeezing into a list if I just want to try something out or something. But I'm not feeling this that much. It's okay. Yeah, I thought about that too. Like, you know, does it go with Gala Greeters? Yeah, sure. But a lot of things go with Gala Greeters, right? Like, do I want to cast this on 3 or do I want to cast Jenny Faye? Right? You know what I mean? Like, I can just get an additional creature every turn. Right? I could play this, or I could play, I don't know, the Teething Wormlet, right? And then get bonuses from all my artifacts or whatever. So, like, I don't think this is terrible, but for the cost, I'm like, is there's other stuff we could kind of do? I mean, honestly, we could even say that the Kadama, right? Get to put a counter on a thing and then attack, and then now we're getting extra lands. So I don't know if this is going to make the cut in a lot of things. If it had trample or reach or something, some other keyword ability just on its own, I think I'd be more inclined to play it and be more excited about it. But as is, it's just kind of okay. Not the most exciting thing. But yeah, those are all the green cards. So now we're going to get into, I guess, the artifacts and multicolor things. And yeah, if you didn't see the other stuff, if you just joined the stream, all these will be up as videos. You can check out the other stuff. If you're just watching on video, well, yeah, everything's else going to be on video. Please remember, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It helps out the video. If you want to be a member here and support me, there are benefits for being members. You get to participate, decide what's going to be on the videos, because I put up polls that go just to the members. I also have a chance for you to get your stuff featured on the YouTube channel, all that. Otherwise, yeah, have fun. Enjoy Eldraine. All right, moving on. We are going to do multicolor cards, I think, is what's next. I don't even know how many there are. I'm going to try not to read these. I just want to see how many there are. So not that many. We can actually just wrap everything up here. We can do multicolors, lands, and artifacts all in one. All right. It's hard to just dodge spoilers during spoiler season to be able to do this with y'all. So I tried my best. There were a few cards I saw. I couldn't dodge them because they were on social media and they just popped up. But it's a tree folk. Why does it not have reach? Because it's a small tree. I don't have a good excuse. It's a little tree. It's a sapling. It has to grow much bigger. Maybe you should have reach if it becomes at least a 4/4. All right. Let me fire up another recording. Okay. Getting into the last of the reviews here. Man, this has been a long stream. We've done a lot here. But if you didn't catch up the other reviews, again, we have them all available. You can see us review every other color for all the cards in Wilds of Eldraine. Remember to like this video if you like reviews, so I know that you enjoy them, and we will do more of them in the future for other sets, because we didn't do them for the last couple sets, I don't think. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Also, be sure to follow me and subscribe so you could be here on the live stream and, ask live questions and stuff about cards. All right, so starting in on this, we have Hilda of the Icy Crown, 2 colorless, white, green, 3/4, legendary creature, human warlock. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you can pay 1. Whenever you do, choose 1. Create a 4/4 white and blue elemental creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Scry 2, then draw a card. This thing is wild, first off. But if you have a consistent way to tap your opponent's stuff, and you can just tap your dude, I'm going to pay 1 and make a 4/4. That's something. This is kind of wild. Now, we don't have an Icy Manipulator in Standard where you can pay 1, tap it, tap a thing. If you did, it'd basically pay every turn, pay 2, make a 4/4. Be stellar, honestly. But we do have cards. Actually, it says whenever you tap an untapped creature, your opponent. So this isn't even 1 or more creatures and once per turn. This is for every one of them. So if you have a creature that can tap down a thing, if you have one of those abilities like it's not illegal right now, Standard, but those cards where you get this thing or your opponent can tap a creature or whatever, that sort of thing, that could be an issue. You know what's funny? The way this is worded, I just realized this says whenever you tap in an untapped creature and opponent. So I guess they had to word it that way because otherwise, whenever they attack, you'd get to make a bunch of 4/4. So that wouldn't work. So yeah, this card, it's a 3/4. So it's not like the smallest thing. It's not going to crush, right? It's not like gangbusters. But if you can find a way to tap your opponent's stuff, this could be pretty. This probably fits as a commander type card because it probably combos with a bunch of silly things. That's probably it. Tamiyo, yeah, that's a good suggestion. I mean, tap a creature every turn, make a 4/4. Because by the time you made your third one, your opponent's not punching through at that point, right? Without getting rid of all your creatures. I mean, that's real. The oily manipulator thing, yeah, that's true. That's the thing that lets you tap something. So yeah, there's some ways. If you can make it happen, this card might be pretty good. And it's not like the other abilities are bad either, right? Put a +1/+1 on everything or scry. And not only that, it's scry and draw. So yeah, lots of upside with this card. What other things do we got here? We have Will, Scion of Peace. He's one of the twins, right? From that were here, the Royal Twins. Colorless, white, blue for a 2/4. Legendary creature, human wizard with vigilance. Tap spells you cast this turn that are white or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. This is cool. I don't know. This almost feels like I want to play it with cards that have lifelink or something like that. But you do have a lot of food in this set, right? So you could crack some food. tap this, and now all your spells, I'm assuming because you're playing a white-blue deck, cost at least 3 less. That's pretty strong. This is pretty good. Or again, you could attack, let your opponent block a couple things, and you're like, okay, I'm going to replace them with this big monster that I had to pay less for. Because this isn't even like sorceries or anything. This is just your white and blue spells. Yeah, white or blue cost X. Yeah, this might be really good, y'all. I mean, I'm not even joking. This might be really, really excellent. I don't know. Because here's the other problem, right? This is a real issue with this deck or with this card. Is that what are you willing to risk that needs that cost reduction? Right? Like how many things that cost, let's say, 2 white or a white blue and like 3 colorless mana are you willing to play so this ability matters? Right? Because you don't want a deck full of those, but you also need like at least 6, or else this doesn't really matter, right? Otherwise, you're just like you're making a couple of things cost like 1 mana less or something. That's okay, I guess. Not the most exciting thing, but it's something. And this is a 2/4, so you can block a lot of things with this. And it does have vigilance, which is kind of nice. So you can attack and then use the ability if you wanted to. It's one of those ones, like, part of me wants to be like, this could be really good. But in Standard, is it though? Now, again, in Commander, where I'm playing a bunch of stuff that costs 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, then yeah, sure, having Will is actually pretty sweet. Because I'm like, oh, I gained like 6 life this turn. Great. Now I'm going to cast these 3 big monsters that only cost me like 6 mana total, right? That's actually pretty cool. But as it is, I'm not like, not the biggest thing. Cool card, though. But I don't think it's that he would be broken if he had lifelink. Maybe. Because, again, I think the issue isn't even what you're gaining life with. I think there's a lot of ways to gain life. I think we have a lot of creatures with lifelink. There's going to be a bunch of food. I don't think that's really the issue. I think the issue here is the deck building, right? What are you willing to risk for bad draws or slow draws to make this card viable? I think that's the real thing. Because, like, I guess there's some worlds where you're just going to tap it and be able to play like 2 creatures this turn instead of 1, and that's going to be good enough. But, it's all right. It's all right. Let's go. We have several more here. So we have Likeness Looter. Colorless and a black for a fairy shapeshifter, 1/1 flying. You can tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. You can pay X, and it becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with mana value X, except it has flying and this ability. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a really cool card. So you get a 1/1 with flying for 2 mana. And then you can fuel itself by drawing and discarding. Put whatever in the graveyard. And then pay, 4 to turn it into whatever 4 mana creature is in your graveyard. And it's permanent. So it's not even like it's till end of turn or anything quirky like that. It just becomes that thing until you change it again, I guess. It is a mana investment, and it is a fragile creature. So I don't know if it's great, but I think it's a cool card. I don't know how good it'll be in Standard. It probably fits in some, fairy, mid-rangey, whatever deck where you've already made them expend some resources and kill some things. And they're like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to turn this into a 4/5 flying Shieldred or something. Like, that's probably doable. But yeah, it's a cool card. Also kind of has creepy artwork. I'm sort of into it. This says, does it lose the tap ability when it copies? Likeness Looter becomes a copy of target creature in your graveyard with mana value X, except it has flying and this ability. Yes, it would lose the draw and discard because the ability says it specifically becomes one of those, but it keeps the ability to shapeshift and flying. So yeah, that's an important thing to note. This thing, also with some cool looking art. The fairy's got some sweet art in this set. Talion the Kindly Lord. 2 colorless, blue and a black for a 3/4 fairy noble legendary flying. When it enters the battlefield, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, the player loses 2 life and you draw a card. Wow, okay, so you have to choose 6, And then if your opponent plays anything that's a 3/3 or a 2/4 or a 4/2 or a 1/5 or an 0/6, you get to draw a card and they lose 2 life. This is an interesting card. And the thing is, like, it's particularly good against, say, like mono white aggro, where you know the majority of the creatures are going to be 2/2s and 2/1s, or right? So you can just call 4 and know that that's like the 2 different veterans in the deck. It's Brutal Cathar. It's possibly the knight that you can discard to give it indestructible or whatever, right? There's a bunch of things in the deck that are just 2/2s, or some combination of 3/1s, right? Because there's also the adversary, stuff like that. So in those instances, it's good. I think when you're playing against like mono green, maybe it becomes tougher because like, well, they have a 2/1, they've got a 2/2, they've got a 4/5, they have a 6/6, right? So it's probably bad in those scenarios. So this feels like it's very metagame dependent, right? Because you could very well play this as a 3/4. It's a 3/4 flyer. Maybe get a card and the opponent loses 2 life. Still not bad if you look at it on rate. Like you paid 4 mana for a 3/4 flyer, got a card, your opponent lost 2 life. That's probably still reasonable. So it's not the worst thing. But yeah, I don't know. This card's odd. I kind of dig it, but still a little bit odd. Or maybe it's even, depending on what number you choose. Yeah, it's a bad joke. All right, Rowan, Scion of War, colorless, black, red, legendary creature, human wizard, 4/2, has menace. It's kind of weird. I didn't think Rowan would be black. Wasn't the last Rowan we saw these guys like red and blue? And then now we just added white to Will and black to Rowan. Interesting. It's a 4/2 with menace. You can tap this and spells you cast this turn that are black or red cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. I mean, it's a 4/2 with menace for 3, so it's at least a reasonable card on its own. This ability kind of has the same issue a little bit that Will had, right? Where you have to decide what is it worth to play with that much colorless mana to justify using this ability. Possible, though, that... Oh, wait, this doesn't work that way. I was going to say you could use this with Ashiok, so instead of losing life, you exile cards. But then this specifically says where you lost life, so that wouldn't even work. Yeah, I don't... This is probably way better than I think, right? I feel like there's got to be some cards where, like, you cast this, you lose X amount of life because it has this downside or whatever, and then you tap Rowan, and now your next couple of cards are, like, -3, and you get these things. But it does say just amount of life you lost, so it's not like you could deal damage to yourself for various things, and that still qualifies. So that makes a difference, too. Yeah, I think this is playable. I just think, again, it's going to be deck construction on how much this matters. Yeah, exactly. Pain lands are an exact way you can lose life. So I think it's fine. It's just like it's a pseudo ramp card that you don't necessarily have to work for, because it's very possible that like you just deal, like, let's say you play this on 3 and it lives, which is difficult because it's only 2 toughness, but let's say it lives, and then you next turn tap a Sulphur Springs and some other pain land. So now all your stuff costs 2 less. Then you could tap Rowan, play a Shieldred and something on turn 4. That's actually pretty good. You know what I mean? Like that's more than reasonable. That's a lot for somebody to deal with. So yeah, this probably has room. I think it takes some tinkering, but it's probably got a home. We have Agatha of the Vile Cauldron, because it was Agatha all along. Like, I guess if you know, you know. Red, green, 1/1, human warlock. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less, where X is Agatha of the Vile Cauldron's power. This effect can't reduce the mana and the cost to less than 1 mana. You can pay 4 and red and green. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 on trample and haste until end of turn. I do not know what to do with this card. This is it's a 2 mana 1/1, which is already not great for what most Gruul decks want to be doing. But I'm thinking, like, if I can pump it, what activated abilities am I playing right now because it has to be activated abilities of creatures, not even just regular activated abilities. Like, what do we want to activate with this right now? Like, maybe, oh, you know what? Maybe like Vorinclex and Pulokranos, like that type of stuff maybe could become a lot easier to flip with this. I mean, that's an option. I don't know if we have that many ways to put counters on this though, but that's something. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess if we get this card big enough, her own ability, you'd be able to activate like twice and give everything +2/+2 and trample. That's kind of cool. See, this is one of those cards that like it's a mythic. So I sit and stare at it and go, what do I not know? Why is this a mythic and it doesn't feel like a mythic? Right? Is this something that just goes ham in Commander? Right? Where it just makes everything cheaper? Which, to be fair, in Commander, this could be the Stone Cold Nuts. Like, I could see a situation where you're like, okay, I put counters. Now I get to cast or use all these abilities to go off 3 or 4 times. Like, that could be awesome. You know, I'm into it. Gruul decks don't use that many activated abilities on creatures, maybe Miglos. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, Pulokranos, Vorinclex, those have some good abilities, but they are kind of pricey. This could reduce it and make it reasonable. But the other issue that a lot of decks have right now is like this still would have to dodge all the removal, the cut downs, and all that to even be viable. So, like, do you want to play one more thing that's susceptible to literally every removal spell, including like in the festivities and, you know, miscellaneous things, than just playing a better creature? I think that's the problem. So this one, for now, I'm probably just writing off, but I will maybe build a deck with it at some point during the season, just because it's a cool ability to try to make work. What else do we got here? This one looks neat. Oh, if Scryfall wants to cooperate. Scryfall's stuck for a second, so we may not get to see cards. We'll just have to wait. Let me see if I could try it again. Nope, we'll just have to wait a second. Scryfall decided to stick on me. There we go. Popped up. We have Yenna Red Tooth Regent. 2 colorless, green, white. Also, welcome everybody to the stream. Just showed up 50 of y'all in here now. Thank you so much. We do have all these reviews toward the end of the set, but the others will be videos, or you can go back and rewatch the stream if you want to see the other stuff. 4 mana, 4/4, Elf Noble. Again, another elf, and it's a 4/4. 2 colorless, tap it, choose target enchantment you control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's legend. Oh, except it isn't legendary. If the chosen token is an aura, untap Yenna, then scry 2, activate only as a sorcery. Interesting. So it says choose target enchantment. I think this got misworded. Maybe. Okay, so choose target enchantment you don't control it, or you control that doesn't have the same name as something else, right? And then, oh, you create a token that's a copy of it. And then, okay, got it. Okay, so this is, I don't know if it like, I guess if you have a deck that just cares about enchantments, because there are going to be a lot of things that care about enchantments in this set, you can play this, but that doesn't feel super great. However, it's probably also not that hard to be able to copy something and then untap this, so it's almost like a free activation where you get to scry also. So this is okay. Yeah, I thought about that too. Get a second Calyx. That is actually viable because it says choose target enchantment, and you can go ahead and make a copy, and the copy's not legendary. So, I mean, that's totally viable. I mean, like, that's a real thing you can do. But again, I'm also going to ask, like, this is where we're going to be at, right? Because we have all these choices in Standard now. Do the Selesnya enchantment decks want this card? And I don't know that answer. They might very well want it, right? It's a big body. It can let them copy things. It might be worth it. But what are we replacing, right? Those decks benefit as that they get to play like the little green 1/1. They're playing the Kami of whatever. They're playing Jukai Naturalist, Calyx, right? At least 8 copies of some enchantment removal, usually like Ossification and something, right? There's not a lot of room. So, like, are they cutting one of their search cards? Are they cutting a Hallowed Haunting to play this? Like, I don't know what the answer is, right? But it is a big body, so they could justify playing it. I just don't know if those decks particularly need something like this. It is an elf, but do the elf decks want this? Maybe, because it's a big 4/4 body, but the ability would be largely irrelevant, I imagine. So I don't really know. I don't know what to do with this. It's a neat card, and I think a lot of people will want this. And anybody that plays commander decks that are white based that play a bunch of enchantments, well, most of those decks are white green anyway, because a lot of those cards, all the enchantresses and everything else fall into that category. So yeah, this is probably super good for those builds. And that's probably one of the things going to keep this card's value moving up. So you can duplicate Machiko, and then when it flips, you have duplicate of the first clone. Yes, that sounds correct. Keep in mind the transformation mechanism. Yeah, you can't flip the backside. But I mean, if you just wanted the extra +1/+1s, like you can get that. Once a card's exiled, it's exiled if it's not an actual card. But even then, just getting the extra +1/+1s could be good enough, though, right? Like that, especially with a trampling creature, could just end the game. So, I don't know. This is an interesting card because it really is going to come down to where the meta shifts and what those decks that are focused on this feel they need, right? More than anything else. And it is a 4/4 body. I mean, you got to respect that. Ariete or Ariete? I don't know. Maybe he's French. Of the Charmed Apple. Colorless, white, black, 2/4. Legendary creature, human warlock. Each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X, where X is the number of auras you control. Ooh, okay. This card's kind of mean because each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or so if you're just putting rolls on your opponent's stuff, they can never attack you with this card out. And then you're just gaining life on top of it. This card's kind of nice. This card's kind of I dig it. I mean, it's not like it's unkillable or anything, right? It's only a 2/4. It doesn't have any protective abilities of any kind, but it can buy you a decent amount of time in the right scenarios. I'm kind of into this. This is interesting. It's fun. I expect a few people will try to play it. Again, it's a human. It's a warlock. There's a lot of those in the set, so maybe there's a sub theme there you can build around. But just the ability itself is not that hard to use, which is pretty cool. What do we got left here? We have Fawn's Bane Troll. 2 colorless, black-green for 4/4. When Fawn's Bane Troll enters the battlefield, create a monster roll token attached to it. Creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. It has you can pay 1 and sacrifice an aura attached to this card. It fights target creature you don't control. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. You activate only as a sorcery. This is just a really interesting card, right? Because you can pay 4 and have effectively a 5/5 trampler, or you can have a 4/4 and make something else a +1/+1 with trample, or you can put an aura on this and then let this fight something as a 4/4, and then you exile a thing, which is also very good. It does only let you fight as a sorcery, which is a pain in the rear, but not terrible. This is a card I could see, like, again, if we were rotating standard, I think I could find more justification for this card. But right now, I think there's just going to be so many quality cards. Does this push out anything else? Unless you have a deck that cares about having a lot of rolls, right? Because then you can just keep removing the roll off of this and just keep fighting stuff for 1 mana, which is actually more than exciting, right? If you get to do that. Because you're like, all right, it comes in with 1, I remove it, fight a thing for 4. And then I put another thing on it, and then I fight a thing for 4, right? And just keep doing that. Keep your opponent off stuff is pretty big. So if you do have a roll-based deck, this thing could be annoying. You'd have to kill it almost on sight. But outside of that, it's probably lesser than some other cards you could be playing at 4 mana in green and black. Says monster rolls are available at sushi places. That is true. They're on most menus. How many cards have the token you can put on an opponent's creature? There's several, because one of the roles is actually turn a creature into a 1/1 creature. So that is a real thing you can do. There's a lot. What else do we have here? Mother Goose, X blue green. It's a bird hydra 2/2 flying. When it enters the battlefield with X counters on it, so no surprise there. When Mother Goose enters the battlefield, create half X food rounded up. And then when it attacks, you can sacrifice a food if you do draw a card. This is kind of neat. So, right, let's say we spend 6, right? So it's a 4/4, or it gets +4/+4, and it starts as a 2/2. So you're going to get a 6/6 for 6. And then you get 2 food tokens. And then when you attack, you can sacrifice food and draw a card. Or obviously you can just use them as food. This is I don't know what to do with this card. It's kind of neat though, right? I'm kind of into it, especially, we've talked earlier on a couple of these other review doing the colors, is that if we have stuff that already is ramping up or things already playing a bunch of treasure, like this is the type of card you can play and be like, okay, I'm at least going to get some value out of this, right? I'm going to play it. Even if I spend like, who knows, 8, 10 mana, whatever, you get this big body and you get a pile of food. So you could either just gain life, or you can also just start trying to draw cards. This is actually a really neat card. I don't think it's great, but it's good enough that it's probably going to show up in some different lists. This thing, Balloona Grand Squall. It's a green, red, blue for a 4/4. So that's great on rate. Giant Noble. It has trample. Permanent. I don't think we've seen that many giants so far during these reviews. Permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. And then Seek Thrills is 2 colorless, green, blue, red, instant, mill 7 cards, then put all the cards that have adventures from among them into your hand. This is just a solid card if you're building an adventure themed deck, right? We've seen several things in blue, red, and green that have really good adventures. Yeah, not much really to say about this card. I mean, it's a quality 3 mana 4/4. We have the mana in the format to be able to play this on time. Later ones we can use to just mill stuff and then put a bunch in our hand, and this makes all those things cheap. Yeah, this is just a decent card. I think it can work for a lot of different things. It probably will end up being a popular commander for a lot of people. I will say this, though. The art feels a little like, a little muted compared to everything else, considering this is a big, crazy adventure giant. But that's probably the only real downside. And then we're into the artifacts. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. 2 colorless legendary artifact. You can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with a +1/+1 counter on them have all activated abilities of all cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. You can exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creatures you control. So this gets to remove creatures from graveyards, or, well, cards from graveyards. But if you remove a creature, you then put a +1/+1 on something you control. And then your creatures that happen to have +1/+1s on them will have every ability of the creature that you exiled. Or of all the creatures that you've exiled, actually. So that's actually pretty solid. For only 2 mana, this is not bad at all. The thing I like about this is that it also is just extra bonus value in any deck that already cares about +1/+1 counters, right? Because it's just 2 colorless. It's easy to play. You want to keep your opponent from reanimating things, using flashbacks, stuff like that. Pretty easy. And then you just get possibly bonus abilities. Even if you don't exile a bunch, it's like if your opponent has one good thing that like has some activated ability, you're great. All my creatures have this anytime I need them to. And you can use any color mana. So that's pretty cool. This is a neat card. I don't know where it excels. But again, if you have a deck that already cares about +1/+1s and you want upside to be able to remove cards from graveyards or anything like that, this checks that box too and just gives you some cool upside ability. So yeah, I'm kind of into this card. Where are we at here after this? We have, oh, this looks epic. Hilda's Crown of Winter. 3 colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it. Oh, well, this goes with the Hilda thing we just saw. You can pay 1 and tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate during your turn. So you can literally just tap it and pay nothing. Pay 3, sacrifice the crown, draw a card for each tapped creature your opponent controls. This card is really good. It's legendary, so, there's that. But obviously, if your opponent attacked with 3 or 4 things, you're like, okay, I can sacrifice it and then just draw 3 cards and then play my new one and then just tap it. Like, this is cool. This, along with Hilda, becomes quite scary because now it's just tap this, pay 1 mana, make a 4/4 or scry or whatever, right? Like, really, really good. Really good. And I like the fact that it's Hilda and then the card that does the thing is Hilda's Crown. I like that a lot. And Hilda's Crown could also just be played in other formats, right? If you just want to play this in Commander as a way to just draw cards, right? There's almost always somebody who's going to try to attack with a bunch of, like, I don't know, with 12 1/1 goblins or something. And you're like, sweet, I'm going to go ahead and draw 12 cards because you draw a card for each tap creature, right? This card realistically might be underpriced right now. Also good for tapping the big threat that might be killing you, right? If they have some unblockable thing or some flyer you can't deal with, you can just keep that at bay for a while too. That's another option. So yeah, this is really, really neat. What's even funnier, it says for each tap creature your opponents control. So if you wait a full turn cycle, and let's say player 1 has attacked somebody with like 2 or 3 things, and then player 3 has attacked with a couple of things, and then player 4 wants to retaliate against one of them, they attack with a couple of things, and great, you blow up your Hilda's Crown during their instep, and you draw like 9 cards, right? So yeah, this card's pretty sweet. I'm surprised this has not come across my Twitter feed before right now. I genuinely did not know this was a card. Like I said, I hadn't been looking at much of the set, but this feels really cool. I like this a lot. If you happen to play the Witch Queen with the enchantment duplicator, then you can attach more curse rolls, and there are also some blue auras. Oh yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff you're going to be able to do. Like, it's just how much time do you have, I think, would be the question, right? Just because you have these things do take time to set up is the issue. Sir Ginger, the Meal Ender. That is a funny title. 2 colorless for a 3/1 legendary artifact food knight creature. It has trample, hexproof, and haste as long as an opponent controls a planeswalker. I see what you did here, because in the last set, it was all the pre-story about Garrick accidentally eating a gingerbread person or whatever. So if they have a planeswalker, you get all these bonuses. That's cute. Whenever another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and scry 1. Pay 2 colorless, tap it, sacrifice Sir Ginger, you gain life equal to its power. So he's basically a food till you start putting other counters on it. Whenever another artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1. Oh, this isn't even once per turn. So again, we come back to the whole idea of, like, we have things generating food, generating treasure. You could just sack like 4 treasure. And then now this is a 7/5. And you have an option of sacrificing to gain 7 life if things go badly. And it could possibly also have trample, hexproof, haste. Right? This card's actually low-key kind of good. Seriously. And it can fit into a bunch of random decks, right? It is just an aggressive creature, being a 2/1 or a 3/1 for 2 that you can also get some life out of later, which is not bad. I kind of like this. This is a quirky card, but it has weird bits of upside because it just be splashed into a bunch of different decks. I'm kind of into it. We have another weird card here, it looks like. The Iron Crag. The 2... you know what? Seeing that is like the Aggro Crag, for those of you that are old enough to know what that is. 2 colorless, legendary artifact. It taps for a colorless, which is rare. We don't get 2 mana artifacts that tap for mana in Standard these days. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can have this become a legendary equipment artifact named Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains equip 3, and equip creature gets +3/+3, and it loses all other abilities. So this becomes an equipment that's pay 3, equip creature gets +3/+3. Which then becomes interesting because you could play a second one then, and since they're become different cards, so that's pretty cool. They're both legendary, right? Yeah, even if it changes, it becomes legendary. So you can't ever have more than 2. It does tap to the new one anyway, would be able to tap to activate the old one, which is kind of nice. This is interesting. I don't think it's great, but if you're already just playing a deck that's full of legends, and there's a few different variants of that, this is probably fine, right? You can just give something +3/+3, and it's a constant nuisance to your opponent. So yeah, this is cool. I'm not like in love with this, but I do like it. And the fact that it just gives you mana on the cheap can also be used by several different decks. So don't hate it. But looks like that's the last of the artifacts. Let's do the lands here as we wrap this up. So Relentless Fortress comes to the battlefield tapped. Taps for a white or a black. You can pay 2 colorless, black-green, and it becomes a 1/4 white-black nightmare creature until end of turn and still land. When it attacks, defending player loses 2 life. You gain 2 life. F this card. But that being said, the card's actually pretty good. It's going to make some games very drawn out and boring and miserable. The black-white control decks are going to love this card. That's kind of the story on it. Like, there's really not a lot else to say there. It's just a good card. Restless Spire also comes into play tap. Taps for red and blue. You can pay red and blue until in the turn it becomes a 2/1 red-blue elemental. Creature with as long as it's your turn, this creature has first strike. It's still a land. Whenever it attacks, you scry 1. Yeah, this one's not as good, but still very solid. It is only a 2/1, but it does have first strike on your turn, so it's harder to block. And that matters in a world where fairies are going to exist. And getting to scry is pretty powerful too. I don't think it's as strong, but only costing 2 to activate leaves a lot more open with this card. I will say it is a 2/1 elemental that's not flying, so it can be blocked by a lot of things. And that makes it a lot less exciting. But yeah, probably still going to get played. I mean, at least a couple copies. Restless Cottage comes into play tap. Taps for green or black. Pay 2 colorless, black, green. It becomes a 4/4 black and green horror creature until end of turn. Still land. Whenever Restless Cottage attacks, create a food token and exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. This one's pretty solid, right? You make a 4/4. You still exile something from a graveyard. This is exactly the type of card I think some of the green aggro decks want, whether that's splashing stuff to be able to play this. And, say you're playing Gruul and you play enough lands that cross over so you can activate this, or you're just playing Golgari anyway. Having a land that always comes into play tap sort of sucks, but the upside it gives you to protect yourself against like sweepers and everything else, very powerful. And it's a 4/4. So that's a big deal. And if you have anything that reduces cost and everything else, like we've seen in the set, that all makes a difference too. It's only opposing color man lands, no allied colors. Yep, that is true. That is true. Restless Bivouac comes into play tap. Taps for red white. Colorless red white turns us into a 2/2 red and white ox creature until end of turn. It's still land. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Yeah, I don't mind this one too. It's cheap to activate, just 3 mana. This is nice. It can almost always be a 3/3+ when it attacks if you want it to be, so that's pretty cool. And again, a good card for the red-white decks, the human Naya decks, stuff like that are just trying to dodge some of the sweeper action. Pretty good stuff. Don't hate. Again, if you also have a deck that cares about +1/+1 counters, right? It's good for that too. It's like good all around. All of these are actually pretty strong, to be honest. The blue-red one feels like the weakest. This comes into play tap. Tap for green or blue. This one's the most expensive one at 5, I believe. 3 colorless, green, blue. Until end of turn, it becomes a 5/5 green and blue plant creature with trample. It's still a land. Whenever it attacks, up to one other target creature has base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. So this one's kind of cool. It costs more, but you get a bigger creature and it tramples. And then you can also turn something else into a 3/3. The interesting thing is, it doesn't say other creature you control. So you could, if your opponent had a big blocker, you could turn it into a 3/3. Or you just turn some other 1/1 or 2/2 into a bigger creature so you can attack alongside this. So yeah, I don't hate it. I guess it's tough. I guess if I had to order them, the blue-red one is probably the worst of them, though it has the cheapest cost, so it probably could be played in more decks. This one's probably the next worst just because of cost. But the upside is actually really big, getting a 5/5 Trampler and a potential 3/3 alongside it. Daniel says, I play slow graveyard deck, but standard really does not need graveyard hate does needs graveyard hate due to the Atraxa Reanimator, Breach the Multiverse. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need ways to remove stuff from graveyards. Or, some way just exile them as a whole, stop what they're doing, whatever, because it makes a big difference. And we did get a couple of cards in the set that do help with that. But yeah, that concludes the review of all of the cards in this set of Wilds of Eldraine. That was a 3-hour plus ride. If you watch all the videos, they're definitely going to be edited down. You're not going to have to watch all of that. But yeah, I want to say thanks to everybody because we did an impromptu stream to do this. We didn't talk about it ahead of time. I popped it on here and we had like 50 people pretty much for the whole stream, 45 plus at least. So thank you for hanging out. If you would like to support me, remember to like this video because it helps so much that y'all do that. And remember to subscribe if you haven't. So next time I'm doing impromptu streams, maybe I'm playing stuff. Maybe I'm reviewing your decks. Like, you can be part of it and you'll get notified. And be sure to hit the bell to make sure you get the notifications. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, please become a member of the YouTube channel for as little as 99 cents. I do have cool stuff that goes just to members on here, which is nice. And you can get your decks reviewed and featured on the channel. Otherwise, check out my merchandise. I have some cool stuff. But there you go. Those are all the sales pitches. Thank you. Support my sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. If you want to buy Magic stuff or get Wilds of Eldraine stuff, go check them out. You can save 5% with code DRAGON. Whew, man, that was a lot. We covered a lot of cards, y'all. We're just over 3 hours. So we didn't speed run it, but we got a lot of good info in there. So thank y'all for hanging out. Much appreciated. I'm going to go get something to drink because I've been talking for 3 hours and grab a bite to eat because it is past dinner time now at almost 7 o'clock. But yeah, y'all know you can find me on the YouTubes. I will have more videos available as always. Join the Discord. It's linked in every description. Yeah, y'all know the drill. But yeah, I appreciate y'all. Really love you. I love having such a nice community because y'all were great to have in the stream. You had a lot of good comments, a lot of good questions. Like, it makes doing the job at least a little bit easier when I don't have a community that's just like going crazy and fighting all the time. There's always knuckleheads trying to like, but you messed up and you need to correct this and whatever. And like today I had 3 comments and they were all wrong in the stuff they were saying, but that comes with the territory. But yeah. Oh man. But anyway, I will see y'all later. Thanks for hanging out. I'm shutting this bad boy down. Adios.